Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. For the Beverly Hills Unified School District Regular Board of Education meeting, January 28th, 2020, 5 p.m. Could we please have Mrs. Starkins lead us in the flag salute, please? Why not? Yes, you can.
Raise your hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mrs. Starkins. Okay, we have no public hearing?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I will second.
Second.
Thank you. Report from closed session?
We need a vote.
Oh, sorry. All those in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Any abstentions or objections? No. Thank you. Report, Dr. Breggy, do we have a report from closed session, please?
There's no action in closed session tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you. At this moment, there's no public hearing? Nothing? No cards? Okay. So we're going to move into number 8, accommodations and recognition. Dr. Breggy.
Great.
Do you want to?
So I'm joined with Mrs. Hacker for a very exciting celebration and a very distinct honor for some of our students that have scored a perfect score on the PSAT, and this is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. And we use this data for a lot of information at our school. It's a great, not only is it a great practice test for your SAT, but it also puts you in good stead for scholarships and other continuing awards. So this evening we would like to recognize the following students that have a perfect score. And we're going to start with the perfect score for English, score of 760 on the 2019 PSAT, Nicholas Walker. Congratulations. And then we're going to take a picture with the board in just a few minutes if you want to head that direction.
And I only have 5.
And our perfect score for math, perfect score of 760, Josephine Cosmose. Noah Kittle-Pals. Congratulations. And Jacob Lee. And one of our students who also received a perfect score of 760, but not able to be here this evening, Esther Goldberg. So congratulations goes out to her. And we're very excited this evening to present that we do have a student that has a perfect score of 1,520 on the 2019 PSAT. So an overall perfect score. This is an amazing accomplishment. Congratulations to Bradley Moon. Congratulations. Okay, and we're going to take a quick picture with the board right over by Thomas.
Yes. You guys are behind us. I think we should sit and let the kids sit behind us.
Okay. He said by Thomas, so I
Yes, here. At the flag.
Do you want us sitting, Rebecca?
You want to sit in the kids?
Sure.
Students?
You want us sitting?
I'll sit. And you can all scoot in. Thomas, you can do part of this. And then have the students behind us. I think that'd be great. We can be standing. So we can have 3 on one side. You want to sit next to your mom? I think we think we need to do this first.
Scoot in a little bit.
Only one Noah here got a perfect score.
1, 2, 3. Thank you very much. You guys can come out this way. My son is the one that ran away without me.
He gave me a hug.
I think that was nice to take a picture together. Okay, let me just plug in. Oh, here's this one. Just give it to Rebecca. Okay. Moving on to, yes, Mr. Margot.
Do they want to go?
Yes, you are, the students you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, I think they are leaving. The students, you're free to go. We don't expect you to stay. We apologize for our delay. Our closed session ran a little over, so I apologize to you and your families for making us wait. But thank you so much for being here, and I want to thank the administration for making this new recognition part of our practice. I think it's never been done before, but I think it's great that we are actually acknowledging students who scored have perfect scores in one section of the PSAT, and also, of course, who scored a perfect score. I hope that this will continue and set precedents going forward for years to come for this district. Thank you. Anybody else? Congratulations to you, Mr.
Isabel?
Yes, Ms. Marcus?
Yeah, I'd like to say something if I could.
Yes, please.
I would love to congratulate all of the winners. I think it's outstanding to be so honored to have a perfect score on the test. Although I'd just like to point out that I don't believe that this has ever been done in the previous years, that I've ever been connected where we've honored the students who have received perfect scores or received high scores on the PSAT. And I would like to make sure that going forward, that we set the parameters of what we're going to be doing so that we know exactly every year that this is something that we will do. But up to now, this is a brand new situation, and I just want to make sure that we know that that there will be the guidelines for how we will do it and so on. So I'd like to make that recommendation. Okay, thank you.
Duly noted. Thank you, Mrs. Marcus. Okay, moving on to, just a minute. Do you want staff presentations, demographic study by Davis. Wait, did we approve the consent already? That's next. Okay, so we're going to do the staff presentations, demographic study presentation by Davis Demographics. And we have Mr. Roach, who's presenting.
Actually, I'm Scott Torlucci from Davis Demographics.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thank you. And I think I have a PowerPoint somewhere coming up. Thank you. Okay. Got it. All right. Well, good evening, and thank you for having me. As I said, I'm Scott Torlucci from Davis Demographics. We've been working for the district. This is our second time coming through here and doing a demographic study for you. So I just want to quickly go over some of the methodology, the delivery, our process, and some of our findings, so you understand what we're doing and answer any questions you may have. So everything we do is based upon residents. We make sure that we want to have the facilities where the students reside. School enrollment doesn't necessarily reflect the actual demographics of an area. We collect a lot of relevant data, student data, birth data, census data, and we created short to midterm student population forecast. We created a report, which I'm sure you all read and put you right to sleep. We did student capture rate analysis and student transfer analysis, and now we have this data available. So what we do is we do something using GIS, Geographic Information Systems. You're all familiar with that in your cars of mapping software and everything. Well, this is a smart map where we can get information behind the scenes. we look at the district, get the district boundaries, the attendance areas, and we break the district and divide it into these small groups or neighborhood areas we call study areas. This allows us to drill down and do various analysis down to that low level. We took your student file. In fact, we've got student data back to 2015, and each of those red dots you see there is at least one student living in that a house or resident. So now we know I can look at any study area, tell you there's X number of students, they're going to these schools, they're in this grades, and we have these programs. So we can actually do analysis down to that level if we want to. So our forecast calculations based on each of those study areas, it's based on where the students live. We graduate the 12th graders up, and we use two main factors: births, partially done by zip code birth data, which helps us do our future kindergarten classes, and mobility, which is a retention rate of students, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And in PowerPoints, the little star you see on the left side, that's just going to be the report page that you can find it on if you really want to look at that. So let me start with incoming kindergarten. This data we get from zip codes. It's reported to the state by zip code, the California Department of Health, and I've been tracking it since about 2004 for your district. And what I do is, because we assume a student is going to kindergarten about 5 years, when they're 5 years. So what we look is 5-year increments of the student data. So 2004 to 2008, on average, there was 393 births annually. By 2009 to 2013, that average went to 370 annually. And then 2014 to 2018, now 2014 is going to be your 2019 K class, so that's hitting your K class now, and then the rest of the future K, it's down to 351. So when you're looking at those 4-year increments or those 5-year increments, in 10 years, the average went down, 10, 15 years, 42 births annually. So that's just showing you've got declining births in the area. You're not unique in this. As I'm sure you've all read, it's happening all across California, and in fact, all across the United States. The second factor, and probably the most important factor, is mobility. Mobility measures the retention as students move throughout the grades. If you have 100 first graders in an area, you would expect the next year you would have 100 second graders. What this does is I look at 4 years of data, 3 years of change, and measure the number of students as they move up. Green is positive, which means you're getting students moving into the area, or they're attending your schools. They may have been there, but they may have been going to a different school. And red is going out. So you can see your mobility is, majority is green. You're getting students as they come up through the district. 105% between K and first grade in Hawthorne's area, 105% district-wide for that. But I did want to point out, I did this last in 2017, and I looked at the district-wide 2017 versus 2019. And while they're both still positive, comparatively, your mobility factors are a little bit down. District-wide change, there's 4 grades increased, 2 grades remained stable, but 6 grades declined in their mobility. So while they're still positive, they're not quite as high as they were before. So this is important because the mobility factors affect every student, every grade. So if we look at, there's 55 students living in Hawthorne's area, 55 kindergarten students. As they move up the grades, it's affected by the mobility, and that turns into 57.6 by the time it reaches 5th grade. So that's how that works. And this is, again, every student, every grade. So let's get to the forecast. Between 2015 and 16 and 2019, there was about a 9% decline in student enrollment overall, about 2.2% annually. We're forecasting that decline to continue up to 16% to 2025-27 or 26-27, about a 1.2% annually. Looking at everything we've had before, the mobility factors, the births, there's nothing pointing to that changing at this point. So we're still continuing on that decline. And if we look at it, just looking at the students living in the district, so I'm not even talking about the students outside. If I look at the historic students living in the district versus where they were 5 years ago and where they are now, you can see I've kind of color-coded and put some boxes and made this crazy chart here. But you can see on the left side, in 2015-16, there was 5 grades over 300, with the highest being 385 of 9th grade. And then, as that's graduating out, they're getting replaced by smaller and smaller grades. It goes down to 4 grades of over 300 until 2019-20. There's only 2 grades over 300. You can see that 385 back in 2015. As it graduated out, 386. The next year, it's replaced by 170 kindergartners. So that's over a 200 student drop within 1 year, just from natural matriculation of students going through. The highest right now of your resident students is 324, and that continues on and graduates out in a few years. And then we see that green that has the 100s and low 200s is making it. So this is just from your historic enrollment to where the red is your current enrollment. You could just see that flow happening. So one of the other things we provided was a student transfer study. As I mentioned before, enrollment doesn't necessarily match the actual demographics, and so if we're looking at this, if I look on the right, there's 449 students living in the Hawthorne Schools attendance area. So all the way to the right there, not all the way, just about the middle right. But there's 600 students attending Hawthorne. So that's, you could see, if you looked at just the total enrollment, the 600 students attending Hawthorne and 675 attending Horace is much closer than the actual number of students that are living there. There's 449 living in Hawthorne and 778 living in Horace Mann. So this 378 is the number of students that are living in and attending Hawthorne School. So it just kind of gives you an idea of where students are transferring back and forth. Hawthorne School has about 222 transfers from inside and outside the district, where Horace Mann only has about 100 transfers coming into that. Another analysis I did was a student capture rate analysis. Now what this does is I've taken the district attendance areas and overlaid it onto census data and got an estimated school-age population for the area. This is a completely third-party population information, so it's just me overlaying it on some other data there. And the 4 areas I want you to look at are the total number of school-age population and the ratio. I have them in red, the percentage population you're capturing. The really good news is that in 2017, you were capturing about 76% of the school-age population. That's good. Now you're capturing about 75% of the school-age population. No real change. The issue comes when you look at the number of school-age population, the estimate. There's 4,881 in 2017. It dropped by over 300 in 2019. So you're capturing the same amount of students. There's just less students out there to capture. And again, you're not unique. This is happening throughout Southern California, throughout the state, really. So, of course, you know there's an abundance of educational opportunities in the area. Within the district boundary, there's enrollment in private schools and religious schools of over 700 students. Within a mile of the district boundary, there's over 4,000 students enrolled in these private or religious schools. So there's a lot of opportunity here for your potential students to go somewhere else. And I may not have captured all of those private schools. Excuse me. And so I always like to check my work too. So I did look at a third-party demographics and to see what they're saying about the area. So if we look, I concentrated on 3 age groups, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and 15 to 19, approximately school age. You see in the census 2000, there was 1,600, 2,000, and 2,300 in those 3 groups. Now there's 1,400, 1,700, and 1,900. And similar to what I'm saying, it's showing in 2024 estimated 1,400, 1,600, and 1,600. So everything's kind of pointing to that decline in area students and decline in enrollment. Pardon me. So observations I have, what I've been saying, that the births have been going down, 42 births annually since 2004-8 versus 2014 through 18. Mobility is positive, but not quite as positive as it was before. You've declined. We're continuing that trend. A little bit, slight less rate than what we had before, but we're still seeing that trend. There's an abundance of school-age population, and abundance of educational opportunities around the area, and you're capturing about 75% of your school-age population, but the school-age population is lowered. Right now, we see you have adequate facilities to handle your current and future student population, and we have this detailed down to that study area level if we want to do any more analysis or if you have any other questions. And with that, I open it to you if you have any questions.
Okay. Mr. Hooper.
I don't have any questions, but thank you for the study.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You know, I while you were presenting, I pulled up the 2017 report, and I just did a quick analysis of the enrollment, overall enrollment, and your initial. I just think it's ironic. Your initial enrollment for this year, 1920, was 3743. The actual was 3504, so we had a difference of 239.
Right.
And then as I calculated that in the ensuing years, that difference increases every year. The difference between what that is informing us is that there's even more of a potential population drop of school-age children than there was in 2017.
Yes.
Which is what I found, and what I found, I guess, most well, that's pretty annoying too. But what I found most alarming was the 5 years out. You had originally, or the report had predicted 3690, and now we're down to 3129 from in 2024, 2025, which is a difference of 561. So to doubling that number, that difference in number and the prediction is kind of startling, and it really gives pause to think that the takeaway from the study as we're looking at it is that we have to recognize that we're shrinking as a district unless something unforeseen and uncalculated happens. Now, we've talked about there's this big push from the state legislature for housing and develop housing in all cities, and Beverly Hills will go through its own rigmarole with that. But if it does become a reality here and we do increase our units, we'd have to immediately get on potentially revising our study to inform future decisions. What I do know, and I guess what I would like to see is if our, let me just pull up my other chart here. If the the 76% increases to 85, 90%, right, if we're capturing more of our residents, or that number goes higher, then what is our max? I guess, Dr. Breg, I'll throw this at a question for you. Is what is our max capacity? Let's say upon completion of El Rodeo, what will be our max capacity of the district? How many students can we allow in? And
Actually, that's a good question. I don't know for El Rodeo what that number is. I don't know if
you know what it is
you
now.
know?
And how many more students could we let into the district now, today?
With El Rodeo is
No, just today with the two K5s, a middle school and a high school.
I would have to get back to. I would
Okay.
hate to tell you it and have it be wrong.
What I do know is that El Rodeo will support more students. It's a larger school
Correct.
than Hawthorne, so whatever happens in the future, we'll be able to definitely increase our K5 population, and we do have room at Horace Mann. Overall, I know there's certain grade levels that are,
Right.
I believe, are maxed out, but
Yeah,
overall,
we do have some room for
right.
growth.
So the real question is, and why we order a study like this, is looking at the bond program, looking at where the construction is heading in the future, what to do with buildings in the future. There's nothing in this that informs me that we need to do a sky is falling scenario and build, extra room. We would have to. You don't want to wait until it's too late, but I guess I would at least follow closely the trends of families moving into the city to see if the middle school enrollment, because that's the one area where we're kind of landlocked and where we would need to have some sort of contingency plan to add program space to that school if we needed, and how quickly we can do that. And we've talked about there's space to put portables on the northwest side of the campus, things like that. So I think for me the takeaway is we can be prepared for anything if need be, whichever direction it goes. But right now, both studies from 2017 and this one are pointing us in the direction that our school population in the city is shrinking. So, and what people have to remember is that with the basic aid, we are not per pupil per seat, so it doesn't necessarily serve us to want to increase, because the fewer students we have, the more you can allocate per student.
Right.
However, if you have too few students, then you cannot run a school.
Right.
So you have to strike the balance between what's a comfortable number for us to exist for an indefinite period of time of we have this many students, this much programming, we can set that in stone for 10 years plus, before you have to revisit it. And that way people moving into the city can feel that there is going to be consistency in our district. We've had such inconsistency with programming because of changing numbers and any discussing properties and programs and facilities, but we're kind of locking into something now after the reconfiguration that I think would benefit us to say, this is how we're running our school district now, and this is how we plan on running it for a while. So, and then you have the support and the numbers to back that up, and you can provide something guaranteed and consistent to the community, to the family. So, I'm not disheartened by this at all. I use it as a reality check to make sure that we are heading in the right direction and keeping our construction program in the right direction, and any future construction programs are informed from these numbers. So that's all I have for now.
And I just want to add that we're also doing a better job of looking to see, for those students that are leaving, but more importantly, those that are coming on as new students, because we have hundreds of new students, and so we're doing a better job of finding out what their journey is, if they're just moving into Beverly Hills or if they are in private school. Just met a family this morning in private school, and this is their first year in our school district. So we're doing a better job of trying to just find out a little bit more about where people are coming from, because this is great and this is wonderful cohort data, but it's also that anecdotal kind of the people that are joining at all different levels of education.
What's not anecdotal, I received a realtor postcard in the mail yesterday of a house in the northwest here of Beverly Hills that was, or sorry, the southwest of Beverly Hills, that it was a 3-3 house for $3.5 million.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a new house. It probably needed some remodel, but $3.5 million. And we wonder why people aren't coming.
Yep.
That's one of the reasons why people aren't, families are not moving, because they can't get into family homes. I know that there's maybe this big push to build apartments or condos in the city to accommodate that, but families, those of us that have them, you want a yard, then we don't have a lot of parks that we can just let the kids go out and play. So I think in long-term planning, we got to keep our eye on that as well and what's happening with the market.
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you.
Mr. Spence.
I want to follow up on some of the remarks that Mr. Margot and the superintendent said, because they touched on two conditions that I believe will bring about increases in our student enrollment well within the next 7 years. As Mr. Margot said, the state requires now that 3,000 new housing units be constructed in Beverly Hills. And I think that when all is said and done, that's going to stick. That's what I think. It's going to stick. The city anticipates the need to modify zoning codes to incentivize investors to build mixed-use buildings and increased height apartment buildings. Not condos, apartments. That's what the city wants, and that's what makes sense. And undoubtedly, in my opinion, those 3,000 units, once they come about, are going to attract younger families with school-aged children. We know that there are many, many, many families who live around Beverly Hills that want to move into Beverly Hills so that their kids can go to the Beverly Hills schools. We know that. There's no housing for them. There's no housing available that they can afford. I just want to point out that, and the extreme of that would be that situation could massively increase our student enrollment. It could massively. Theoretically, if 3,000 new families moved into town with kids, it might double our enrollment. Now, that may be way out of one, but even if it was 50% true, it would be a massive increase. And the other point is that Dr. Brady touched on is that our after reconfiguration to one middle school, our improved academic program throughout the district is going to attract Beverly Hills students from private schools. It already is, and I think it will continue to. So I'm just going to say that from my perspective, while this report indicates that we should expect and anticipate a reduction in student enrollment over the next 7 years, I believe that we're going to have a significant increase.
And that is why we do suggest that we revisit this annually. You mentioned the programs, that's going to be caught up in our mobility factor as students who weren't in a grade decide to come back into the school district, and they'll be caught in our mobility factors. So if we look at this annually, we will see those trends change. Also, while looking at this annually, we'll get a better feel for what's happening with the development and with the homes. And once those start coming online and they're getting plans to actually do this, we can then build that into our forecast models to make sure that you have the facilities if they does come back in.
Well, we know this. Going back to some of the remarks that Mr. Margot made, we know that when El Rodeo comes back, we're going to have room for plenty of growth TK through 5. We know that. We know that as far as the high school, once we finish construction, there'll be all kinds of room. Our high school accommodated 2,500 students at one time, down to under 1,300? Under 1,300. So we've got no problem there, long range. We have no problem there. The sticking point may be the middle school, and that's why several months ago I suggested to Dr. Brege that we look at the middle school and try to understand what is our maximum at the present time, what is the maximum enrollment at the middle school at the present time, and what could be done with the school to increase the maximum, and to what. And that's the crucial area that I think we should be looking at.
I agree with my colleagues to the right have said. I believe strongly in data science. I think it's important to have this information, but there are some things, as has been said, that we really can't account for in our projections, and I think that's what we're seeing. So, we've had huge increased enrollment in certain grade bands since February, and I know in reconfiguration we lost a lot of students, but we also saw growth in certain grade bands, and I think that reconfiguration has impact that we can't really measure yet, and we can't really completely forecast yet. So it puts us in the unenviable position of having to really, from year to year, be very agile and very thoughtful as we see the changes that are coming. We can't get too far out ahead of our skis. We don't want to go ahead and talk about building, a huge brand new middle school or adding on major buildings, but we're going to have to really focus on the areas where our work needs to happen and our planning needs to happen. There are a lot of different formats that can take, but I think we need to really be able to marry the science and the reality of what it is that we're seeing in each of these grade bands as the middle school kind of takes shape and takes hold and people start to learn about it, so that we can manage the growth. I think that's generally not just in corporate America, but what we see people struggle with all the time is managing growth well. So that's the position that we end up being in, and we have to really just stick to the numbers, pay a lot of attention, and revisit this frequently so that we don't get caught off guard. So that's all.
I think one thing that we have talked about on this board or in the prior board was about studying studying populations. I'm sorry? Oh, Mrs. Marcus, I'm sorry. Please, Ms. Marcus. I apologize. Thank you. Not yet. She's still on. Mrs. Marcus?
Maybe you want to continue.
Okay, so if Mrs. Marcus hears me, she can speak after me, okay, Mrs. Marcus? So as I was saying, I think that we've talked about studying student populations, and I think Mr. Margot touched on this a little bit. What changes did you see from the last study that you took as it relates to private school? Because one of the things we've talked about is finding out why students leave our district and go to private school if they choose to. We can't do anything about students who move out of the district, but I think it's incumbent upon us to understand, the dynamics as to why people choose to leave, and reassess and analyze that information so that it's useful, so that we get better at the delivery of what we do, which is education. So I just wonder if you were able to see if your projections were right on target as it relates to your projections for leaving the district because of private school, or were you not able to capture that?
We don't look at it specifically for private school movement. We just look at
it as a whole.
Yes, we don't have the reasoning behind that. If your district takes an exit poll, which some do, we could get a little bit better feel for that, but it's hard to get that data sometimes.
So I know we've discussed this, so let me ask this to the administration, whoever wants to answer. Do we do that right now when students decide to tell us that they're leaving because they're going to private school?
So
or for whatever reason?
we just, there was not a practice in place before, but when we started to talk about this, Gosh, just even at the end of last year, doing a better job of trying to figure out our own population. We now have that in place so that we are collecting that information, where students are going and why they're going there.
So I think it'd be interesting to see that information or have that information shared with the board, just the sheer numbers of how many students left and for what reasons. And maybe you can categorize the top 3 reasons or whatnot. I think it'd be useful for us to look at that data and study it. I think we've been asking for that, and I'm glad to hear that you're actually capturing that data now.
Right.
And it's probably not substantial.
For this school year. So there hasn't been a lot of, right. That would be a good time to share that with you.
And finally, I guess my last recommendation would be that we use this information to plan around programming, because I think it's important. I think that has been said, and I think with this being so relatively new to us, this information, we can make better adjustments going forward to best represent the needs of our district based on population size and whatnot, and also quality. So Mrs. Marcus seems to have joined us. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my phone does play for Samantha back online. I really was interested in the comparison between the study at the middle school, which did a tremendous amount.
Oh boy.
Because of the quality of the education that we were providing with our kids. I'm not quite as zealous about the 3,000 units attracting young families with young kids, because in an effort to get these 3,000 units in, trying to downgrade the size of them, so they're not going to be larger units that are to the school. I just don't. I think it will do something to bring them in, but I don't think it'll be.
Yeah. Mrs. Marcus, we seem to be having an issue with your connection. You're coming in and out of the speaker. I'm not sure if it's just a bad...
Can you hear me now?
We can. But you're going in and out.
I don't know. Okay. Also, I'm glad that we do this study so that we can stay on top of our needs and what we need as far as staffing is concerned, because I want to make sure that we do fill the classes that we have, and that we are able to offer all the classes that the kids need. And the other thing is that, of course, with the number of students we get, we now also have to remember that we do not get more money for each student that we get. We just get the pocket of money, and it gets divided up for the number of students we have. We don't get more money if we have more students. So I just wanted to make that point. And as I say, I was glad for the study. I don't think there's been that much. Our enrollments are going down. I would love to see what the 3,000 units, but I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't know what to expect. But I'm glad we did the study, and I'm glad that it appears that we're, along with all the other many of the other districts, following along with them also. So I think that's about all that I wanted to say on this at this point.
Okay, great. Thank you. Does the administration have anything to say? No one? Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving along, can I, to the consent calendar, may I please have a motion?
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Okay. I'm pulling a G.
I'm sorry, Mr. Murray, can you repeat that? Can you repeat that, Mr. Murray?
It's pulling G.
G.
So I move approval.
I wanted to pull as well. So I needed a second. So do you second it?
What are you pulling? You have
I'm pulling B, the certificated personnel report.
So I move approval of the consent calendar except B and G.
Thank you.
Okay.
Second by Mr. Spitz. Okay, so I will go first. Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any objections
Aye.
or
Aye.
abstentions? Thank you. Okay, so thank you. So I just had asked a question about certificated. So I've noticed that in the certificated reports, we've been capturing R factors randomly, meaning we've been approving these R factors. And just wondering, we're already at the end of January, a few days just short of February. And just wondering if there's a way that we can capture for the following year all the R factors all at once at the beginning of the school year, maybe perhaps when we adopt our school budget or shortly thereafter. That's my first question. And secondly, for this year, I went back and looked at some of the agendas, and I saw that we had R factors in September, in August, some in December, even in January, and I saw some today. So it seems like we're always being hit with R factors. How many more R factors are outstanding, and is there a way for us to finalize and approve those before, like, let's say, the beginning of March? Would that be too difficult?
So I think that in the perfect world, it would be great to be able to capture all of those expenses in the beginning. Many times there are staff that have not been identified for certain positions until later throughout the year. That's a possibility. I know that in athletics sometimes it could be done by season. I mean, there's a variety of things that it's not purposefully done in a random way for the board, but there's a lot of personnel issues that come up. People either don't continue in their role as a club sponsor, but there's just a variety of different reasons why we may not get something at the district office from a principal right away, but it's processed right away. So, but there's a myriad of reasons why it doesn't all happen like in August or September.
So is there a way, so I guess my question is, since we're already at the end of this school year, I mean, we're already in February, we only have a few more months to go, when we approve our factors, and these are, without talking about athletics, I know that they're probably in a category of their own just because of the season that the sport is being played at. My question is more academically, let's say, or programmatic. For those R factors that are supposed to be taking place over the course of a year or a semester, have all the R factors for semester this year, let's say, or the entire year already, have they already been configured? Is this the last batch, or are we going to be receiving more?
I can answer on the programming piece. So per the CBA, each principal is allotted a certain amount of units, which they utilize to fulfill some of the academic and extracurricular support positions. In addition, BHEF graciously, thank you BHEF, also provides our building administration a certain level of a certain number of R factors. So all those are already predetermined prior to the beginning of the school year. Unfortunately, some of them, again, aren't filled due to whether the timing, like say if it's a spring play and that staff member isn't being identified to lead that staff play or the student play until spring. But the total overall number can be reviewed, and then HR can actually be able to pull and provide a report for those that are still sitting out there for you. So when Mr. Pavoni returns back, he could be able to cross-reference the total number that BHEF approves each year that they're able to provide our building administration to support those. And then in addition, our units, we can provide all that information to you guys on the front end, and then as they're starting to tick off, maybe we can make the recommendation that HR can give us an update on which ones are we missing and cross-reference total number that are out there, and then what are still outstanding, because a lot of it is like Dr. Breggy was stating, is sometimes it gets caught up in translation and paperwork, or going into payroll, or going into LACO to get paid, those types of things.
Okay, so so I guess when we are being asked to approve an R factor, you've already have the position, the control as far as financing, yes. And then we have a certificated. We already have the personnel piece of it. So it's those two pieces have conjoined, and now we're ready to approve. But those that we haven't approved, it's basically because we don't have the personnel part of it. Is that what you're telling me?
Totally. So an example would be, even though we know that we have spring sports and athletics coming right. up, sometimes, we are still searching for that person. So yeah, there are I think maybe an example would have been the community service person, that we knew that we wanted to have it on each of the campuses. Again, it was trying to be able to find somebody that would be beneficial in that position and that would do the work instead of just handing over the money at the time.
Okay.
Yep.
And also,
you.
just want to add too that sometimes too far in advance, and then there is a change, and then we've already paid somebody, is double the paperwork to try to work with payroll to get that money back.
Got it.
So,
Thank you.
But I think the most important thing is that these are really well thought out. So these are all positions that have been budgeted. So it's not just an add-on. Yeah, I mean they've all been meticulously budgeted.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a motion to approve the certificated personnel report revised?
Yes, and I will second that.
Second it.
I seconded it already. Okay, all those in favor of approving the certificated report revised?
Aye.
Any objections?
Aye.
Thank you. That's 5-0. Moving on to item G.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the agreement for use of school property between the Beverly Hills Unified School District and the Beverly Hills Education Foundation.
A second.
I pulled this item. I'm curious at. It's a very low lease rate on this, and I'm wondering. I'm going to swallow these words, but is it necessary?
So I can tell you that when I first came to the district 3 years ago, that cost for BHEF and summer school was $35,000.
Okay.
I had the same thinking you did, that these are our students. And I have had a lot of conversations with Mrs. Trost and Janine Raymer, and we had a great conversation about, what are our real costs as a school district? And so when we started to think about, our costs are really about some of the custodial, security, and so we went from what used to be $40 to $60 a day per classroom to 10, 15. So we went from $35,000 that we would expect payment from BHF, which is really just taking from our own students to begin with, to a lesser amount.
So it's really calculated as just covering expenses, personal expenses, not
Just
there's
our
not
basic-
really a lease in there.
It is. I'm not sure why it was. Summer school should never be profitable for anyone, really. You just want to make
Well,
your
they
expenses.
would beg to differ, but as they should.
So this worked out best for us because ultimately
that's
does
why I
come back
asked
for
the
our
question in
students,
the
so.
first place.
Yeah, but it didn't make sense.
Okay.
And so now we feel like it does, and we feel like this is a really good, fair agreement.
Okay. Thank you for
I
the
have a
clarification
question
on that.
since-
I appreciate it, Dr. Breggy.
I have a question since it's open and on the floor. And I've asked a few people, but I haven't really gotten an exact explanation. I know that at some point in the not-too-distant past, there was a contingent of people, a committee of sorts, that helped from year to year discuss the start date of summer school, what that looked like. And I know that it's changed, or at least I've heard that it's changed. I don't really know how or when that exactly happened. But I have noticed also over the last couple of years, there has also been declining enrollment to some degree in the summer schools program. So I'm wondering if maybe, Cindy, if you can share with us what the evolution of that has been, because I've seen these contracts on the agendas, from years ago. I'm just not sure what exactly the procedure.
Well, it could
how
probably
it's
be
changed.
because our population is declining. We just heard that. That's
I guess
I'm
first,
wondering because
specifically, what is your question to me in terms of summer school? There's a question about dates and there's a question about enrollment. What is your question?
Well, I know that summer school used to start a week after graduation. And then a couple years ago, it was moved up to the weekend after, like the Monday immediately following the last day of school. And so in going back through the agendas and the way that happened, the dates used to be determined by a committee of people. There were some people from PTA, and there were
I've
some
been on BHEF for
admin.
5 years now and have yet to ever know of a committee that decided what dates summer school were held. So I don't know where that data comes from.
Dr. Breggy, were you able to find out anything about this?
No,
history of it?
we did some searching to find out what year it seemed to be when the district did not own summer school. It seems to be that's when that happened, but we've searched. I think we were looking back to 2011, 2012, but we've yet to find the exact year.
And I believe that the task of the committee at the time was to determine whether or not it should have been 5 weeks to 6 weeks long. So the committee itself was looking at the curriculum to determine whether it was a 2.5-week semester.
When summer school was
or
first being
6
developed
weeks.
within the district, yes, the conversation relied mostly on how long summer school should be. Summer school now for us is 24 days. We have to provide instruction for a first and a second semester course, 12 days for a single semester course.
Mm-hmm. No, that I am aware of, and that makes sense. I'm just wondering when the change was implemented to start the Monday after versus a week later.
Last year was one of the first years we've done summer school. Almost immediately after school got out, we were able to complete 24 days of instruction prior to the 4th of July, which was amazing for many of the people in our district. They enjoyed having the long summer vacation before school started again. Mm-hmm. We got feedback from our WASC accreditation committee and focus groups that the students and parents alike would rather have summer school start earlier in the year. Conversations with our staff, many are teachers at BHUSD who go from classes once it ends, working for summer school with us. They prefer to go right into summer school as well so that they too have a summer that can be at least 1 month prior to when classes start.
Right.
So our feedback from the community, our feedback from the teachers who work in our summer school, our feedback from students has been that they all prefer to have it happen earlier in the summer versus later.
Yeah. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that it is actually important for kids to have a break between the end of their long school year and the beginning of summer work. I understand that people's vacations get involved, and everyone has an opinion in that regard. But I do think
it's anecdotal. I mean, I honestly have to tell you, feedback I've gotten from a number of parents well before I was president of BHEF was, why are you doing summer school? My kids have to come home early from camp and then school starts again. So I do think that it is difficult, when you're really trying to service a very large community with a lot of different needs and a lot of different summer schedules. And we think that this is one of the best ways to deliver it, to look at what makes it possible for us to serve as many students as we can, work with the teachers that we have available, and allow for our students to have some chunk of summer before actual school year classes start.
Has there ever been a consideration of adding a third semester so that students who aren't around to start, because if you're not there on the first day, you can't complete the first semester, and you have to be, because they're so heavily weighted, the number of hours, the material that's crammed in. Has there ever been any consideration given to starting first, second, and third semester so students that are away during those weeks can still do a whole year's worth of class on an extended schedule?
It needs to be in 24 days. Ideally, for those students who are taking first and semester classes, it works for them to go from one semester right to the next. We also have to staff, and so it's an additional cost if we have an additional semester. So I think that there's a lot of factors that are involved, and we right now are looking at filling up the classes in the time frame that we have. If we extend it longer and then we don't get classes filled up in the first 24 days that we've programmed, then those classes don't make, and we can't provide the instruction. So we also open ourselves up to having to provide fewer classes because fewer students are enrolled.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It looks like there are fewer students enrolled between the last 2 years and this past summer.
There are fewer students in the district. We're really doing our very best to provide the education available.
I think you guys are doing a stellar job. I'm just wondering what was the decision-making and what the history was and how it all shifted.
We're trying to provide a program that meets the interests of our students, that provides for credit recovery. Part of why the enrollment is down as well is we didn't have our K-5 program last year because of a problem that we had with the location and changes in maintenance that are happening there. So this year we're going to be having our TK5 intervention and expanding that into some more enrichment programs for the students. We're expanding the programs that we have for middle school, so I think we're going to get a lot more interest from that because we have an amazing middle school. And I'm hopeful that we're going to see that number go up.
Excellent.
So, Ms. Strauss, I just want to say thank you.
Yes,
I did not know you were going to
absolutely.
be here tonight, but I'm happy you're here to answer the questions.
Yes.
and-
My apologies. I didn't
know,
mean
I
to seem
think
like
it's
I was being,
great. And-
defensive. But again, I
No,
think
I
we're all
just-
on
I
the
like
same
to know
team,
the
and we
history.
really do want to do just the
think-
very best for our
I was
students.
just going to add, I know that my sister-in-law teaches La Cañada, and they have their summer program just like ours. I think there's no difference. Like, they start exactly the way our program starts, and I know that it's a fabulous program. I'm just so happy that you guys are providing this service to our students. So thank you for all your work.
Thank you very
always.
much. Okay, thank you.
Okay, can I please have a motion and a second to approve item G? under the
We
consent?
made the
Did
motion,
we
second, yeah.
Already?
We just
did
need a vote.
Do we vote, please?
We have not voted
Can we
yet.
vote, please? All those in favor? Thank you, Mr. Margo, for correcting me. Can we please have a motion? Can we all please vote? All those in favor, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions
Aye.
or objections? Okay, thank you. 5-0. Moving on to professional and official business. Approval of resolution. Can I please have a motion for the approval of resolution number 2019-2020-01 vaping?
So moved.
Second.
A second.
Seconded by Mr. Spitz, I think it was. Discussion.
Pardon me?
Discussion? Okay, are we ready? Okay, all those in favor? Discussion,
can we
I
have some
asked.
discussion?
Yes, I said discussion. Nobody
I'm
said
sorry.
Discussion? Mr. Riccobero.
I don't have any
Have anything,
comments,
Mr.
but
Margo?
if anything comes up.
I mean, I think it's an informative resolution. It keeps it in people's minds. It is an epidemic and a problem. I just hope that we, as much as the school can do, that we do it practically, but we also stress that this is a problem that needs to go back to the home. But I was glad to see from the report from last week's study session that there will be some attention paid into the counseling department or Norman Aid to address these issues, because the thing that resonated with me is when the student panelists had said, when I asked them, this is an issue to discuss with their parents, and some of them were honest and said, well, sometimes the parents are the problem as well, and so it's not to be discussed with the parents. So if there's more avenues that we're taking at the middle school and high school to have a place for students to come and discuss their issues, that would be great. But like I said, I do maintain that this problem does start at home one way or the other.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Margo. Mr. Spitz.
First of all, I'm wondering whether, I don't have a copy of the resolution. I did read it. In fact, I had something to do with the drafting of it. But I'm wondering whether the resolution shouldn't be read by somebody before we vote on it, number one. Number two, however, I am going to request that staff put out a news release about this resolution, and also that they send the resolution to all our parents, copy of the resolution.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Spitz. Mrs. Walker-Sherman. Sorry.
So I think this is a really good jumping off point. I think it states what the view of the board is in terms of tackling this problem, this epidemic that we know exists in our district. I think that this kicks off an effort that needs to be holistic and multi-layered. So it's my hope that we will revisit the board policy in terms of tobacco and address making corrections there to include e-cigarettes. It's my hope that the direction of the board will be followed and brought back in terms of a campaign, whatever that looks like, whatever format that is, that gives graphics to associate the dangers of vaping to our student population. And I'm hopeful that our continued conversations with BHPD will yield some meaningful consequences and an actual hierarchy of what happens if. Because I think that without the accountability piece, there's really not much that we can hope to accomplish. So I'm excited that this is an effort that we're beginning. I think it's something that we need to continue in earnest and revisit frequently, and just make sure that our kids are aware and our parents play a role. Like I completely agree with what you said, Mr. Margo. I think that a lot of this starts at home. I think that vaping is not just dangerous if it's THC or tobacco products or CBD products. A lot of parents are not aware that vaping essential oils also is not okay, and it's not appropriate, and it's not something you should give to your children. And it's important that we recognize the power of modeling. Positive modeling is really important. So the more that we can talk about that and help curb this epidemic, I think it would be great.
Mrs. Marcus.
Yes, I'm very happy that we are taking such a proactive approach to this, that we're going to first start out with the resolution about the problems with it, and that it will be continued, that we will continue to promote the program, to enforce the program. And also I agree wholeheartedly with what Mr. Margot said about the parents, and that it begins in the home and getting the home to be involved. And I think the idea of the press release and the news release by Mr. Spitz is a great idea, and I look forward to seeing it and to hearing this to be started to be talked about in the community, how we are not going to tolerate this in our schools, and that the people who do decide that they are going to do it are going to be dealt with harshly and in a very severe way. And so I'm grateful that we have taken the steps that we have taken.
Okay, thank you. A few things that I want to say, and I will be happy to read the resolution, Mr. Spitz, is first of all, I just want everyone to know that we had a very comprehensive study session last Thursday, and everyone in the board was part of that discussion, and I was very happy with the resolution that I'm about to read that we agreed to, but also, most importantly, that we as a board were collectively in agreement that there has to be steps after this resolution that have to happen. And so we're looking to the administration to come back with the areas that we discussed for making sure that we have a plan in place for tackling this problem that is obviously affecting our school sites. And so today I was at the PTA meeting at Hawthorne, and I think parents were engaged, and the themes that you all touched on were part of the discussion that took place there. So the parent involvement is a very critical part of this. They play a critical role in making sure that this is contained, and that we effectively address the issues and we resolve the issues associated with vaping in our schools. But these are just the first steps. So I want the community to know that we have asked that more be done, and we're looking to our administration, and I think in a few weeks I'd like for the staff to come back and just really explain to us, what you all have come up with, and explain that to the community so that they know that we are aggressively looking to address this issue. Thank you. So, and I want to give credit where credit is due. I want to give thank you to Mr. Spitz for being so instrumental in putting this together. A lot of this was by his direction, and so thank you for taking that. I know you started this, I think, a few months ago, and so I'm happy that it's now coming to this level where we're going to actually adopt it. So Beverly Hills Unified School District, Beverly Resolution number 2019-2020-011. Whereas a significant percentage of Beverly Hills High School and Beverly Vista Middle School students smoke e-cigarettes, also known as vaping, in violation of the district regulations. Whereas the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported that as of December 10th, 2019, 2,409 hospitalizations and 52 deaths are attributable to lung injuries as the result of vaping products laced with vitamin E, and the best way for people to ensure they are not at risk is to refrain from the use of all vaping products, and vaping products should never be used by youth or young adults. Whereas the National Institutes of Health reported that 80% of youth who vape use flavors and flavored e-cigarettes are high in nicotine content, and nicotine is addictive, and the changes that the teenage brain can permanently affect attention, learning, and memory. Whereas the Food and Drug Administration is investigating more than 120 reports of seizures and other neurological symptoms linked to vaping. Whereas the California Department of Public Health urges everyone to quit quit vaping altogether, no matter the substance or source. Whereas the Governor Newsom has issued a vaping epidemic executive order stating that with mysterious lung illnesses and deaths on the rise, we have to educate kids and do everything we can to tackle this crisis. End of quote. Whereas the latest annual poll by the National Institute of Drug Abuse found that vaping by 12th graders has doubled over the past year. And whereas the governing board of BHUSD is cognizant of its responsibility for the safety and well-being of all students at the schools, and now therefore the governing board of BHUSD does hereby resolve to oversee a multifaceted educational campaign to eliminate student vaping at BHHS and BVMS. So, may I, all those in favor of the adoption of this resolution?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
against? Or any abstentions? Thank you. That's 5-0.
President
Moving on.
Hacker,
Yes.
would it be possible, maybe perhaps we move to planning and facilities before the other staff presentations, so all of these gentlemen?
Sure. I will entertain that suggestion, Mr. Margot. Let's see here. Let me just make a note.
I move approval of adoption of resolution number 2019-2020-008, approving amendment number 5 to the construction services agreement with ProWest PCM, Inc., DBA ProWest Constructors for Beverly Hills High School Buildings B1 and B2 Modernization Project, establishing a preliminary guaranteed maximum price for Phase 2 of the modernization of buildings B3 and B4.
I will second that, Mrs. Walker. All those in favor?
Any discussion?
Discussion. Sorry. Mr. Recupero, Mr. Margot, Mr. Spitz. Nope. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions or objections? Okay, that's 5-0.
Okay, I'll make a motion for the approval of the agreement with SVA Architects for architectural engineering design services for the new HVAC system at Beverly Vista School.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any objections or abstentions?
I move approval of an agreement with RMA Group for construction materials testing and inspection services for the Beverly Hills High School B3, B4 project.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any discussion?
Aye.
Okay.
I'll make a
Moving
motion
on.
to approve the agreement with Leighton Consulting for the geotechnical investigation and report for the Beverly Hills High School B3, B4 project.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any abstentions or objections?
I move approval of an agreement with SVA Architects, Inc. for architectural engineering design services at Horace Mann School.
I'll second.
Okay, I think I had a question on that one, so,
I have a question.
yes. So discussion, Mrs. Marcus, you go first.
I was just curious to know what, since Horace Mann is basically such a new school, what is the $109,000, I believe $108,000, what are the design services is that for? What are we creating here?
So who is going to respond, Jeff?
Filters, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay,
Jeff is
Well, there's-
coming over to address your question. Mrs. Marcus?
There was a short list in the rationale on the agenda in the transmittal that actually explains the projects involved, but we need to hear from Mr. Pileman anyway, so.
You are open for an update, sir.
Thank you very much. The design proposal up for approval encompasses the expansion of the current lunch shelter shade structure to double the size of that facility, swap out the drinking fountains with bottled water fillers throughout the campus, as well as an evaluation of all restrooms on campus for grade appropriate requirements, and the expansion of the restroom, the kindergarten restroom facilities for staff-attended restrooms required for kindergarten rooms.
Did you get that, Mrs. Marcus?
I had a question about that.
Yes, I did. Thank you.
What is the timeline for completion of this project from start to completion once you have this approval? And how, because is this part under the reconfiguration or not really? Because if it was, I was going to ask, is it going to be paid for out of developer fees or how are we paying for this?
This is currently slated to be paid for with developer fees.
Developer fees. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And so what is the timeline for completion? You're not going to...
8 to 10 weeks for the design phase. Once this is approved, at this time, we don't have a DSA approval timeline and a construction timeline that we're ready to publish. But over the course of the design, that schedule will be developed in conjunction with, I think earlier we talked about summer school programs and other things ongoing on the campus. So we have a big effort going on right now with coordinating the facilities improvements, M&O improvements, and the summer school needs for this upcoming summer. So we're overlaying all of those items over the next 2 weeks, as well as discussing with JPA and BHEA and our construction and M&O teams.
And I guess you can just answer this quickly. For the one that we just approved for the SVA architects for Beverly Vista, is that also being paid for out of developer fees?
Yes, I believe so. I think the funding source is listed on the rationale, but I believe that one is.
Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that.
One last question, Mr. Palmer. The scope of work at Horace Mann, is that over-the-counter approvals at DSA, or is that?
Well, I don't think it's going to be able to be an over-the-counter, but we're considering breaking up the scopes to see if we can sneak them into the under-the-counter threshold. That's a part of the study we're doing with the architect.
And I assume the air conditioning and the HVAC system is not over-the-counter?
I don't think that the work at Beverly Vista can be done over the counter.
Okay.
That's some pretty significant restroom upgrades, as well as the HVAC.
Okay.
There's a lot going on at Beverly Vista this summer.
Okay. And yes, the HVAC system is capital facility.
Got it. You did. Thank you. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or objections? That's 5-0. Thank you. So we will go back to
Thank you.
11B.
11B. We're going to now...
I move approval of the Total School Solutions Agreement for development of the district's strategic master plan.
Do I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Sherman-Walker. Walker-Sherman. Have to get that. Okay, any discussion?
Dr. Breggy, the research you did on this, because we had pulled it in the last...
Yes.
I know my colleagues had questions. Were those answered at any point? Because I know there were questions brought up in public about the word I'm looking for is escaping me, but the reviews and client list about that. So the other thing I wanted to touch on is, does this company have experience dealing with school districts who are interested in personalized learning programs?
So the first part of the question is that yes, that we provided that information for you to look at as far as other districts that they've worked with. I don't think that there was anything specific about personalized learning, but this is an authentic process, and so and these are seasoned educators. So no matter what the topic area is, that and a lot of that information is what we've discussed as a board and cabinet, will be included into the plan. So they don't come with a template or with any preconceived goals for our school district. So personalized learning and many of the other initiatives that we talked about will be included into the plan.
Great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Mr. Spitz.
Do you have questions or comments?
No.
Have you or has anybody in cabinet spoken to any of the previous clients to get their actual pulse on how the work was done for reviews? Like, it's great that they have a list of other districts that they've worked for, but have you actually talked to them and had them say, yes, it was a good experience, I would recommend you work with them?
Yes. So not only have I spoke with them, but I also was introduced to two people at the CSBA. So after our previous meeting, the president from this Total School Solutions actually introduced me with two of their former clients at the conference itself. And some of our surrounding districts have utilized them in different formats from a financial review, because they do provide, and Mr. Roach can back me too, is they provide one of the reasons why we really like them as a solution, no pun intended, is the fact that they do provide a overview of maintenance and operations to facilities, to finances, to academic, to student services. So they provided the most comprehensive overview for a strategic plan for us to be able to then streamline. So our fear too is they're going to come with a lot of information. And so how do we start to unpack that for the community and be able to really formalize those into then streamlined goals for us to be able to start making decisions under. But cool. Yep, we have.
The cabinet did a full interview as well with the organization, and the unique part is actually taking this brand new LCAP version and being able to incorporate that into the strategic plan. It's interesting how everything really comes together, and so it's very exciting that we've done some major shifts in the school district, but we have a long way to go as far as teaching and learning and initiatives and really kind of just packing it all together. So it's a really good time, and this is an organization that is not coming in with something that they've done before that might work for us. It'll be an authentic process.
Thank you. Mrs. Marcus.
No, I'm fine. Everything is okay.
Okay, great. I did have some questions, and so my question was more about the timeline for the scope of work to be completed from start to end. And my second question was, will there be input solicited from the school community? And, who would be the point person to put that group together if that is going to be something that you are anticipating of doing? And what process will exist to seek members of the community, school community, and who are these school community members that you are looking at, if you are?
Excellent. So I do want to draw the board's attention to one of the things that Dr. Berge had just mentioned. On January 23rd, the California Department of Education just released the new format for the new LCAP for the 2020 to 2023. So we all have exposure now to the new format. Total School Solutions also has exposure to that exact same format, and the exemplar that they shared with us, one of the examples that they wrote around a strategic plan, one of the first things that they address is how does that strategic plan tie into that former district's LCAP? So those are excellent things. To answer your questions, that is one of the things that they do, one of the few things that they do suggest in bringing kind of a canned solution is we need to bring in a certain level of groups, special education, our ELD, our English learning population, some of the unduplicated populations that typically aren't represented in a lot of these voices, in our goal creation, in our LCAP. And so they will work with us directly on being able to recruit the proper people to be able to sit at those tables. Something like 8 or 9 different groups, if approved tonight, that Bonnie will be able to sit with as a unbiased voice in the room to collect the information to be able to bring back. Also meeting with you guys, the Board of Education, to administration, to parents that are outside of the unduplicated, PTA, PTSA, PTA Council, and then also students, Thomas. And so your name actually came up in conversation from Cabinet around being able to recruit a wide variety of not only middle school, high school, utilizing the ASB as a vehicle, but then also identifying some of our upper level elementary students, because some of our 4th and 5th grade students can really give us some insight into what's happening really great and what's not happening great at the elementaries currently. So hearing directly from them, but making sure that our parent population is represented from a TK through 12th grade and representing all the different unduplicated low socioeconomic English learning. There's a laundry list of people that we would be required to have as part of this process.
I'm assuming that, I know you mentioned special ed, special pops, but we're also talking about teachers. I'm assuming general certificated teachers, in general
classified.
areas, classified. Okay, great. Thank you. And so the timeline.
Oh, sorry, yes, that was the first question. And so because our first submission for the 2020 LCAP, and that was one of the things that the cabinet, we all wanted to ensure that these were working in tandem. We're hoping to have this completed with information to bring back to the board in a presentation probably close to spring break, with then utilizing kind of that fourth quarter to kind of take that strategic plan and allow it to drive then the answers within our LCAP format and be able to submit the LCAP in June. Obviously, it's due June 30th of 2020, but we hope with this process that we'll be able to get that information early, submit it early, and allow them, then the state, to give us feedback as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay. May I, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Any objections or abstentions? 5-0. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. We've been spending a lot of time talking about our middle school and middle school programming. Just last board meeting, we started to talk about some of the experiences and opportunities for our elementary schools. And so we're going to hear from Mrs. Kaber and Mr. Regan again, as last board meeting we were talking about the 4th grade field trip experience. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about 5th grade with an organization that we have an established partnership with Wolf. And I'll turn the presentation over to the administration at Hawthorne and Horace Mann.
You have a copy of the presentation in front of you. Good evening. We just wanted to come in and present a little bit about what we've been talking about some opportunities for our 5th graders. There's like a button to push suddenly. Way back when we met with the Leadership Advisory Group, we spoke about opportunities that would differentiate our students as we got into just a specific elementary school. And one of the programs that we talked about was taking them on some sort of outdoor education trip. We met with Kevin Allen from the middle school, and we talked about what would be appropriate for 6th grade versus 5th grade. And over time, we talked about what an opportunity it would be for them to end their elementary career in a sort of celebration and a place for them to celebrate together before they moved into middle school. Which one is which? There we go. Sorry. We contacted WOLF, which stands for Wilderness Outdoor Leadership Education. This program was founded in 1994 and has been working with Beverly Hills Unified since the year 2002, mostly doing our 7th and now 8th grade trips. They employ teachers and naturalists that are really familiar with both teaching standards of the grade levels, and we get to specify which standards, which we'll get to in a next slide, but also with the nature and the environment that they're in. They've allowed us to custom design a program that we have talked to them a little bit about, focusing on team building, and their specialty is connecting with students in this like middle age range, right? Like they're in their 20s, and they have this unique opportunity of like they're just post-college, all of their staff is college graduates, and they've spent time with other students, so they're taking them outside of their normal school day, outside of their normal school environment for experiential education. Why am I doing that? Okay, because you're good at it. Exposure. Do you want to for this? I'm going to share my mic.
So I'm going to read it from here because that's just far away today for some reason. Thanks. So we wanted to figure out a way to get these kids to get some exposure to a variety of different topics during this field trip. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is having them working on some team building activities, both as individual elementary schools and then together as the incoming 6th grade class at Beverly Vista Middle School. So they're going to be working on emphasizing communication, listening, and cooperation skills amongst themselves. Our hope is that some of the middle school staff will come over to be able to kind of do an introduction as well and be there with the kids so they get to know them. It's also giving the kids an opportunity to learn about some leadership skills, for example, communication, empowerment, decision making. A lot of the activities that Wolf does, it's kind of like pushing yourself to your limit, but also working together as a team to show that together you can accomplish so much more than you can by yourself. Every Wolf program promotes school spirit, so not only school spirit for Horace Mann and Hawthorne Elementaries, but also, again, building that community of we are going to all be the incoming 6th grade middle school class, so we're also all part of Beverly Hills Unified School District, so it's a great opportunity for both the elementary school, the middle school, and the district spirit as well. And it's getting the kids to be able to know each other, spending a couple days together before they get together to spend the whole year together. And it's also kind of giving kids an opportunity to start feeling out if they want to be in a leadership role in the 6th grade and in the future, how they can kind of start building that position. So we're looking at a variety of different opportunities, and there is a repetition there. The leadership one is up there twice. Sorry about that. So, big button.
So we've asked Wolf to focus on these standards specifically, the NGSS standard for organisms and ecosystems, because we're in this incredible environment. The location is in Brandeis Bardeen Institute. It's 3,000 miles. 3,000 acres. I'll get this right. 3,000 acres of land in Simi Valley, hidden in the hills right there. They're working on vocabulary and language acquisition, both in like leadership environments and also in those science spaces. They're working on listening and speaking standards as they get a chance to present in front of the group, and there'll be a narrative component. Throughout all of this, they're going to weave all of these social studies standards with ideals of government into their leadership connection. And, of course, critical thinking, as we're there. This is a sample schedule. It's actually pretty clear up there. It's clear far away. About what they'll do on their 2 of the 3 days. The goal for us is that they would spend their time in separate groups, Horace Mann groups and Hawthorne groups, and then they would have meals together and then evening programs together. So that it would be going up on one day, so arrive, and then they would come back on day 3 before the end of the school day on day 3. I just put 2-day schedules. They'll probably do breakfast, closing circle, coming on back to school.
And a lot of the activities will rotate, so they can't have everybody do the exact same things at the exact same times. So they have 5 or 6 different activities that the kids are rotating through. So, you know, a Horace Mann group may do a low ropes course on the first day, but a Hawthorne group may do it on the 3rd day. Right. Yeah.
All of the pictures from the presentation are from when we took our 6th graders, either at El Rodeo or Hawthorne, up to Brandeis at the beginning of the year, the beginning of fall 2018, when we did a 6th, 7th, and 8th grade trip. So all of the programs that they're doing and everything that's there is part of where they'll actually be. The trip details are Tuesday, May 26th. We're proposing through Thursday, May 28th. That's the weekend, the week post Memorial Day weekend, post testing, and right before they would have a 5th grade promotion. It'll be at Brandeis Bardeen Institute, which is in Simi Valley, right off the 118. The goal is that there's 100% attendance. So part of that is that if students are not comfortable sleeping there, that there would be something in place that's close enough that they could be picked up or be there just for the school part of the day, so that they get some exposure to this and everyone has that experiential education. We wanted to talk about substitutes needed. Because they're staffed, Wolf is staffed at such a large ratio. They're 1 to 10, sometimes 1 to even less than that, even like
it's often 2 to 10.
Yeah. Plus, they have extra floaters. We really only need our 5th grade teachers that would attend, and our goal is to ask them to attend minimally through the school day, because it is a drivable place, and that they could drive themselves home, and then we would need some staff that would sleep there, but the Wolf staff will sleep there. The total cost, if we multiply the $260 per student times 250 students, we get $65,000, plus the cost of buses that would get us up there, and that cost is 100% being passed on to parents and PTAs. Which is different from the 4th grade trip. Which this is going directly through the PTA. Our next thing. The last thing we wanted to provide for you before we get to questions is just a list of 5th grade trips. This is from last year. We tried to gather everything that the 4 elementary schools did last year, which all look very different and really streamline into what's happening this year. Both schools are going to the Griffith Observatory. So what we tried to say is that each student gets to go to the Griffith Observatory and at least one other trip. And we're trying to do that we're working with Mr. Seaman, we're trying to do something like that for all of the grades. As we're blending staffs, as we're putting together programs, things got lost or things had to be sort of given up. As you can tell, we can't do that whole list of trips that are on the left from last year. So the fifth grade team decided that the Griffith Observatory would be a core for that trip. They also, I understand from Horace Mann, wanted to also go to LA Discovery Cube, but weren't able to make those arrangements for this year, but they plan to pick that up for next year. The Reagan Library has a specific fifth grade trip, and then Horace Mann is going to Hyperion Water Plant, and then some of the Horace Mann teachers did college visits. But then we're hoping to include that all of the fifth graders will be given the opportunity to go on this trip. Do you have any questions for us?
I think it's amazing how we're bringing together all the fifth graders before they enter sixth grade. That's awesome because now that we have a designated middle school, it's well thought out, and you guys seem very enthusiastic, and I am too. So thank you.
Thank you for presenting it like this and taking the lead from the last one.
Thank you.
I know. I appreciate it greatly.
Of course.
And there's a lot of kids that will never get that summer camp experience, and I think it's really important in somebody's youth to have this. My one question was, if you are looking for 100% attendance, why do you need subs?
We don't need subs. That's what we were saying. We don't need substitutes. The answer is 0. We're going to take those fifth grade teachers with us.
Oh, I didn't see the 0.
Sorry, I was just...
all it says is substitutes.
Right.
Sorry,
substitutes needed.
It was answering a question that had been provided to us earlier, and we just
So substitutes not needed.
not needed.
Yeah, I was just
you.
saying, that was like a talking point.
The only thing would be if for some reason a group of students
Did not
for
go.
whatever reason did not go,
Right.
I understand,
then
but
we
if
would
you...
need a staff. We would need someone to
Yes,
stay
you would.
back at
Yes, you
school.
would.
Whether that's a substitute or whether that's one
Right.
staff member that stays
I
back.
understand. You would need subs as per as many kids didn't
Correct.
go. I completely understand. Okay.
So I've actually been reached out to by a different teacher in a different grade level who said I'd like to come up after school and I can help to sleep there at night and do afternoon activities. She taught those kids in an earlier grade, and she said I'd love to reconnect with them on this kind of trip, which we can provide for without any additional cost.
I'm just curious because for some parents, the sixth grade trip was the first time their kids go away, right? And then it's seventh grade, they get used to it, so they're more comfortable. Eighth grade, take them.
Please take them.
The fifth graders are probably going to run through the same thing. I'm wondering, did they run a one-night instead of a two-night program? I'm just curious, was that looked into? Because that might be easy to swallow for a lot of the parents who are a little uneasy about letting their kids go to this, that if it was only one night, you would probably get better attendance. Maybe not. I'm just wondering if they do that.
Look, Wolf will do anything that we ask them to do, but they don't recommend it. We discussed it as part of the planning. They didn't recommend it because by the time they got there and got settled, then they're packing right up. Something about a second day and having a full day there allows some comfort and more of that camp experience of waking up and going to bed on the same day.
Yeah, I could see from their end where the experience is better to do the 2 nights. I don't have an issue with that, but they're not our parents, so that's why I ask.
I think that we can make something work for them because it's so close. It gives us an opportunity to say, pickup time for anyone who's not sleeping over is 9 o'clock when the evening program's done. They're not missing anything but bedtime, and that really is very clear. And we can staff throughout the camp to be able to do that without any worry.
And of course, you can employ peer pressure. The cool kids are staying overnight. That kind of thing, right?
Fun pajamas.
Right.
Okay. Yes, I wasn't teased. Thank you.
I said fun pajamas.
You've sold me.
Oh, thank you.
I'll be interested in
You're
seeing...
welcome to come.
I'll consider it.
Okay.
I'll be interested in seeing how well you can sell 100% of the parents.
That's our goal.
That's our goal.
I think this is a great program. I'm really happy to see it. Two things. I want to echo Mr. Margot's sentiment. Thank you so much for allowing us to use the last meeting as a teaching moment and then coming back in the way that we asked you to come back, to get the board to weigh in before selling it to the parents and collecting. That really is... we appreciate it.
Positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement. I have to say I'm really impressed with the curriculum that you guys articulated, all the different areas that you want to focus on. I think this is part of why it's so critical for our leadership to be involved in the decision-making process and vetting the opportunities that our students have. And then the last thing I wanted to say is my only concern about this is that equity is really important between the two schools, and I'm sure that there was a huge amount of effort made to make sure that the students in the grade bands, from 5th grade, have the same opportunities at one location as another. I know that there's 2 opportunities for Hawthorne and 2 opportunities for Horace Mann, but I wonder if for next year we can't try to make sure that they intersect a little bit more so they can actually, the students from Horace Mann can enjoy LA Discovery Cube. And I'm not saying that's on you.
I think it's 3 and 3, actually.
Well, and
No, for this year, it's one together and then 2 and 2.
I did speak with one of our 5th grade teachers this afternoon, and she said that she was interested in doing the LA Discovery Cube and the Reagan Library. Just the planning got away from them because they have to plan so far in advance, and people weren't sure what grades they were teaching, how many kids, and so now that we have a better idea of that kind of information, we can definitely do a more thorough planning period to get some of those field trips on the agenda.
Yeah.
So it's definitely things that we wanted to do. It just got away from this year. Okay. None of the field trips that we did last year were taken off because of this trip.
Yeah, no,
that's important.
I'm not suggesting they are.
Okay.
And I appreciate that.
Really quickly, is that throughout the city, as former 5th grade teacher, there are a ton of opportunities for specifically 5th graders. That Reagan Library trip is only for 5th grade. The Music Center performance is only for 5th grade. Riley's Farm really only hits 5th grade. And because there's so many 5th graders in the city, I guess, in the county, as we heard from the demographic study earlier, is that if you don't wait on the phone and get that space a full year ahead of time, there's just no space for you because it's only open to 5th grade. And so that is what pushed different groups out, not because we weren't interested, but we know that as Hawthorne has an opportunity to re-register for the Reagan Library, they can reach out to Horace Mann and say, actually, we have 10 classes that we'd like to register at the same time.
That's awesome. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. Mrs.
Good evening. First of all, I'd like to compliment the presentation, and I thought that it was well done. Second of all, the fact that you're going near the end of the school year so that the kids can bond, and when they're coming into the 6th grade next year, they will be with kids that they will be with from the 2 schools is a great idea so that they can start to meet some of the people that they'll get together with in the following August. It's a great idea. I'm familiar with the Wolf program. They do a great job. Approximately how many 5th graders do you anticipate that you'll be taking if you get 100% of the kids going?
We have just about 250 students across the 2 schools.
Are you planning to take any parents as chaperones at all?
No.
No, we wouldn't need to because we would have our staff there during the day, and then we would have the Wolf leaders there in addition, both during the day and in the evening. So we wouldn't necessarily need to have any parents there unless they were staff members also. And Mr. Spitz volunteered to go, so we're good.
I'm looking at a number of...
You want to come, Ms. Morgan?
I have some reservations about that because of the fact that you're taking a full class of kids, and every class has, let's say, 28 or 29 kids, and you take 1 adult per class. That teacher is going to need her hand. I mean, once they get up there at the Brandeis Bardeen, they're a little more free. So you really
they're in
hope that the staff.
The Wolf program is providing staffing, 3 of their staff for every class that we bring. So there'll be a teacher and 3 Wolf staff.
Okay, I was just curious to know that because that's quite a handful.
15.
And but I think it's a great program, and I look forward to hearing how successful it was or is. and that it may be something that you'll be continuing to do for several years to come. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus. So I just really want to thank you. I had asked about the curriculum and how many substitutes and what is the cost of the district, so I can see all of this was answered on my questions, so thank you. Could you just clarify, did you say that PTA is paying for this 100%, or is there a cost that is being passed to the families?
The cost is being passed to the families.
So it's just a pass-through?
But PTA is doing a pass-through. I know that in part of our budget, we worked on a scholarship piece.
Of course.
And they'll help us to absorb the...
Right. Do you have any estimate as to what the costs you're looking at for a family is, or not yet?
At Hawthorne, I can only speak at Hawthorne, sorry. We're trying to roll everything in. Our fifth grade parents have asked not for us to piecemeal things. So as we're asking for them to prep through promotion, through a fifth grade yearbook, through a BVMS sweatshirt, that we roll everything into one cost, and the trip will be part of that. And I don't have an exact number, but we need to also add the cost of buses going on to that. But I don't know. They want to put everything together, so there's one cost.
So it hasn't been done yet.
It hasn't been done yet. We're waiting for this approval, and then when you vote on it at your next board meeting, if it gets approved, then we'll be able to pass that information on.
I really appreciate the opportunity for the board to really have this exchange, and I think you beautifully laid it out with all the answers that we were looking to have. And thank you to Dr. Breggy for giving my questions over. But here's a question for the board. So the way this was put on, if you look at your board agenda, we looked at it as a proposal and discussion. So if the board feels comfortable at this time, we can approve it, and we can have a motion from the board if you wish to. If we have first and second, we can go in and entertain a voting for this item. And I did ask if that was okay, if the wording would be okay, and it was. So when we set the agenda, so that we wouldn't, it wouldn't have to come back to us if you were all ready to vote, but it's up to your discretion. So if there's a first and a second, we will entertain voting and approving this now. If there's not, we will thank them, and we will ask, and we will put it back on the agenda at the next meeting for a vote.
So my only...
Yes, Mrs. Marcus?
I will so move.
So thank you, Ms. Marcus. I will accept that motion, but let me just get in. Mr. Margo had a question.
Well, I will second her motion and still ask my question. Are there going to be any other documents that need board approval that are attached to this kind of trip? Because it's not an out-of-county trip.
It is an out-of-county.
It is an out-of-county. Oh, it's Ventura County.
County.
So my understanding is it's going to come back to us anyway, because there's an actual form for the out-of-county trips,
Correct.
right?
That is in Mr. Siemens' office.
It was attached. It was attached as part of this. It's the contract and also the trip slip form.
Yeah, we discussed all of this because we wanted to make sure that if they were looking for a possible approval tonight, that all that would be.
And both are attached.
Because I knew you would ask. I told them I was going to ask.
Okay.
It's like just a step into Ventura County.
Okay, so it's actually this particular the field study trip bus request. That's what we're approving.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So may I have a motion now, Mrs. Marcus?
She motioned it. I second.
Okay, we're done.
That's his name.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any objections?
Aye.
She approved it to approve.
Okay, that's a positive, right?
That's PBIS working for you.
And any objections, abstentions? None? That was 5-0, so the vote carries, and thank you again for being here tonight. Was that easy?
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
What a difference.
I would also like to thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Great idea. Just a couple of other things. We had a real special night on Saturday. Our district was recipient of a design award from the San Fernando Valley American Institute of Architects. Beverly Hills High School took the honor in Master Planning and Modernization within the education category. Mr. Margo was the lucky board member to attend and get that award, along with our DLR group, Team Concepts with Mr. Blake, Pro West, and just a special thank you to all of our board for having some input, and that's a pretty special award. So we've put some information out to our community to let them know of the successful work that's happening in our school district. Just a couple other things that I had the pleasure of attending the chili cook-off at Horace Mann on Sunday. Very successful event. The wrestling meet at Santa Monica High School was extraordinary. I tried to go to at least one of everything, and that was a great win for Beverly High. The dance company at the Wallace was just extraordinary. Just the talent, the leadership of our dance company and our teaching staff. It was just phenomenal. It was professional level entertainment in a very professional venue, and it was just really exciting to be able to see so many people there, so many students and staff that actually went. It was fantastic. And on a more serious note, the coronavirus is something that is often on the news as a headline, and I just want people to know we're putting out information when we get it. We take this very seriously. We are working with our custodial staff. There are things that we are doing in a preventative way in some of our high traffic, high touch points with disinfectants, and would like the community to know that we're ready if there continues to be increasing cases. There are phases of sterilization and things that a school district will implement, and we're on top of those things. And so there's some new information that's just come in today that we're going to be sending out to parents, but I think we're doing a good job of staying in front of this. It's very serious, and we take it very seriously. So a couple of things just to pass along, and this was in some of the information that we sent, that if you are sick, to certainly stay home, washing your hands, and if you do feel like there's a fever or there's any fatigue, coughing, shortness of breath, kind of like what I was doing earlier, go see your doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Breggy. We will continue with Student Services Update on PBIS. Mrs. Chisholm, please.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Hacker. I have the pleasure of having one of my staff members here today. Ms. Angela Lawyer is here. She's our PBIS coordinator. I know some of the board members have met her, but not everyone. So she's here to give you a presentation and update on our implementation of PBIS throughout the district. And then she and I will answer any questions that you have in tandem afterwards. So with that, I turn it over to Mrs. Lawyer.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'd like to appropriately address the board. Good evening to Mrs. Hacker, to the board, to our superintendent, Dr. Breggy, and to cabinet members. PBIS is an implementation framework for maximizing student outcomes, those that are academic, social, emotional, and behavioral for all students. Ultimately, it's an overlay. Successful PBIS implementation is an overlay to solid instructional practices and strategies and classroom management. It's critical to establish routines and procedures related to PBIS, that initiative, so that students know exactly what to expect. There shouldn't be any surprises. The pyramid that you see before you is a pyramid that represents the percentages and where students lie as it relates to interventions that we implement. So the bottom frame represents 80% of our students will respond to Tier 1 interventions. The middle, the yellow, approximately 10% of our students will require Tier 2 interventions, and the top red, 5% of our students will require more intensive interventions. The timeline for PBIS implementation, counter to popular belief, is more than 3 years. It's approximately a 7-year process with multiple stages and phases. There's a handout which delineates all phases of that process in your notebook, and that binder is a color copy. The first phase is exploration and adoption, which is year 1. Second is installation. The third year is an initial implementation, and the fourth year and beyond are full implementation years. The foundation for PBIS in Beverly Hills Unified School District, district goals and objectives for implementation and policy, are ongoing professional learning and coaching, PBIS fidelity tools which have been established, gaining and communicating support for PBIS administrators, school staff, families, community, and other stakeholders, our funding resources, thanks to BHEF who've supported us in that space, identifying the first cohort of schools for PBIS implementation, and to discuss alignment of Swiss form with the office discipline referral. We spent a significant amount of time our first year and first semester working with council to develop an office discipline referral that was uniform for the entire school district. The implementation elements, thanks to the district for approval, are funding, visibility and dissemination, political support, policy and systems alignment, and personnel readiness. A big part of the implementation had to do with really communicating with district and site leaders about what's coming. The leadership team, which encompasses all of the site leaders and district administration, head by Ms. Laura Chisholm, my direct report, professional development, coaching and technical assistance, evaluation and performance feedback, and then content expertise. And to finalize that, it's the local implementation demonstrations. Why we need this? How did this come about? In a data study, upon my arrival and thereafter, we discovered that the California dashboard indicates that 6 student groups within our district have high suspension rates, and it increased over the year prior. The SD population, disabled, African Americans, Filipino, Hispanic, and whites. There are significant opportunities in mathematics performance with students with disabilities, and opportunities for one student group in English performance. It's, again, student with disabilities. Our disproportionality is with 3 subgroups, specifically with suspensions. That's the data focus. The goals for our district with PBIS implementation is to employ a multi-tiered support system, enhance collaboration to identify opportunities for both behavioral and academic improvement. Those go hand in hand. Maintain steady growth in successful areas like we're doing in English language arts, and focus on academic data to identify best practices in areas for growth in instructional practice and pedagogy. The focus on the behavioral data to identify the tiered activity and established a tailored yet time-released action plan for correctives. And you should know that each site has developed an action plan for how this will happen. Focus on desired behaviors and outcomes, and encourage a paradigm shift and create a culture of expecting desired behaviors. So for the site level implementation, this is what's happening at each school. There's been administrator training, school staff overview, a self-assessment survey, school data profile, Swiss training and implementation, PBIS school liaison training, and Swiss Tier 1 team readiness, and that's where we're operating this year. We're in Tier 1. PBIS site team training. So each school has an active site team. And where we live today is the Tier 1 Swiss school-wide PBIS with the PBIS team and its principal. Thereafter will come classroom PBIS with the PBIS school team, PBIS site coach with the district coordinator, that's myself, and then we'll venture into Tier 2 PBIS with a focus on refining our existing systems. The role of the site teams is to collect the data in the building, ensure expectations are taught, reinforced, and monitored at the school level. What are the kids expected to do? What are those expected behaviors? They also incorporate celebrations, boosters, and incentive events, communication about PBIS activities at the faculty meetings, and communicate with parent groups, PTA, and community. Collect and analyze PBIS specific data. And I'm happy to say that 3 of our schools now have parent members on the PBIS teams. Our PBIS site coaches are as follows: Phil Chang at the high school, Catherine Warren at the middle school, Afi De La Johnny at Horace Mann, and Krista Guthines at Hawthorne. My role in communicating and keeping all the teams cohesive: I'm a strong communicator and optimist and positive leader for all teams. Highly skilled at developing and sustaining trusting relationships, ambitious and positive about the change process. which can be a challenge in selling something new. Respectful of teachers and the demand of the classroom, and skilled at working with and analyzing data. The site leaders receive information about their data and progress monthly, so on a 30-day rolling cycle. Mentoring, providing assistance to the PBIS teams and coaches, ensuring that data is collected and used efficiently for decision making, and sharing information and results with stakeholders on a regular basis. I prepare for and attend PBIS meetings district-wide, county-wide, and regionally, and assist with the development and implementation of action plans, our local action plans as well as our district action plans. Use of assessment instruments and student outcome data to determine progress. For progress monitoring, the school teams determine the appropriate evaluation tools. They employ interventions with fidelity regardless of the challenges, and we review data at scheduled intervals. Right now it's monthly. The teams will identify successes and opportunities and next steps for their sites, because each site has its own culture and its own process, and staff complete evaluations regarding the process. So where we are now, this is pretty exciting considering where we started. We have established expected behaviors at each school site. There's been a PBIS rollout at each site to both the staff and the students. And the evidence of Tier 1 strategies that you would see if you visit the school sites are as follows. Posted behavior expectations at every school, established and engaged PBIS site teams, site coaches facilitating growth to support the framework and implementation, a heightened staff and student awareness of PBIS. The kids and the staff know what to expect. There's heightened behavioral awareness and accountability. And if you approach any of the students and you ask them what their behavioral expectations are, they can tell you. There's school-wide culture shifting, and the big one is a reduction in student discipline and bullying incidents. I've included specified data for each school site that I'll share with you later. As it relates to training and progress, there's been training provided for all staff, certificated and classified, to include instructional aides, playground aides, and security guards. And we currently have parent engagement events on every calendar for each school site. Along with PBIS, we've implemented our anti-bullying program, which was board approved, Hvac. The role of Hvac is to identify bullying trends, to shift and develop bullying rules, school rules, and then to modify supervisory trends at the school sites. So our bullying data I'm really excited about. Last year in 2019, we had 34 documented bullying incidents, and they were labeled R, as that at that time that was the only classification required. This year for 2020, year to date, we have 12 bullying incidents. It's a percent of change and a reduction of 64.7%, which is amazing. And go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What are the time frames from these two? Because 2020 is not even a month old yet.
Well, I should say this. It's from August it's semester 1 of last year compared to semester 1 of this year. So it's apples to apples.
It's really 2018 and 2019.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And you will see that data attached at the end of your binder. As it relates to Beverly Hills Unified School District discipline data, year over year, I did something similar. You'll see semester 1 data 18-19 compared to semester 1 data 19-20. Every school, with the exception of the high school, has experienced a decrease in discipline incidents. So at the high school, you see we had 91 last year. This year we have 101, an increase of 10.9%. Hawthorne, however, had 119, reduced to 54 this year, a reduction of 54.6%. Beverly Vista, 252 last year, reduced to 185, a reduction of 26.5%. Horace Mann, 197, reduced to 145, again a reduction of 26.4%. The most egregious label in discipline are K violations, disruptive activities. Last year, semester 1, we had 432. This year, semester 1, we have 295, a reduction of 31.9%. And so overall, our discipline incidents have been reduced by 33.4% district-wide, and that includes and considers the absorption of the students from El Rodeo, which makes it more statistically significant. Our PBIS parent presentations are scheduled for the following dates and times. At the high school, February 20th at 6 p.m., Horace Mann, March 26th at 6 p.m., Hawthorne, they're doing theirs together. The middle school has opted to do it February 18th at their PTA meeting, 8:30 a.m. PBIS expected behaviors. Kids can only meet our behavioral expectations if they know what we expect. So each school site has developed these behaviors in collaboration with their teams and their staff. Beverly Hills High School is get involved. Respect, lend a helping hand, clean campus, stand up for others, and do the right thing. Beverly Vista, theirs are known as the 4 core, building resilience, values learning, making connections, and showing integrity. Hawthorne Hero, being honorable, engaged, responsible, and open-minded, and those are further scaffolded with definitions of each. And Horace Mann, the Husky High Five, be safe, be respectful, responsible, be an upstander, and no matter what, persevere. We highlighted Beverly Vista as they were one to first roll out their incentive wheel. So in this photo, you see Kevin Allen with his site coach, Katie Warren, as they had rolled out the wheel with their site team and kind of defined how the incentives would work at the school site. Our next steps, in collaboration with Ed Services, BHUSD certificated staff and leadership will need to identify professional development and in-district training in the following areas. 1, classroom management, and the other, engaging instructional strategies. That's all that I have, and thank you for your time. I welcome any questions at this time.
Well, I'm very happy that there was a very thorough presentation about Pbis, and I did learn a lot, and I know it's a long process, but it's just kicking off, and I'm happy to see where this goes, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. It means a lot from a high school student.
Thank you, Angela. First, a housekeeping matter. The high school parent presentation on the 20th. The middle school is running a big event that night for the PTA, masquerade ball, which I've already bought my tickets, but I would love to go to the high school one because I have a high schooler coming, so I'm wondering if we can talk about shifting the date on that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So that's the housekeeping part. Couple of things. In your early slide, it talked about successful classroom management, and I think that in going into next year, the principals at all the schools should have a pretty good idea at this point of where faculty is having a hard time in that area of classroom management and be able to hopefully target and address those staff members prior to August so that whatever help that they need specifically, because there are teachers that are fantastic at it with classroom management and there are teachers that need support. So is there a specific plan? Because a lot of this is really hinges on successful classroom management. So do we have a specific plan to address that area?
Great question, Mr. Margo. And it piggybacks on the last slide in what we're talking about, what we're going to collaborate with Ed Services about, and it'll be something that we will be talking to the board about further. I don't really want to steal Dustin's thunder, but we will be talking to the board about some instructional coaches and whatnot, that will help support that. We also have an aspect of that. Angela does go out if we have particularly problematic classes or a group of classes. Angela actually goes out and does one-on-one coaching with staff members currently. She's done that. She did that last year, and she has done some of that this year to help support. And again, it's finding the need of the staff and giving them the tools to be successful within their space. So the answer to your question is yes. And part of it is in place now, and part of it will be brought to the board for further consideration very soon.
Right, in investing in a 7-year program that we're in a couple of years into it.
You're absolutely right. It will not be successful without that second layer,
right,
which is why we felt it was very important to put it on your radar and then to come back with how we plan to address it later.
So the classroom is one area. The other area is administration follow-through.
Yes.
And consistency with administration. So
Yes.
I hope that you are also addressing that as well.
We are. We're working very closely with the site administrators and their evaluations, and as well as the evaluation of the site admin teams as well.
So my last question would be with the statistic on, and it was on slide 18, but the statistic of bullying incidents is decreasing as well they did, the 64.7% decrease in incidences. How much do you attribute or factor in a plus or minus on students who don't report bullying because of a myriad of reasons, but we do know that there are students that don't say anything. Some of them because they feel like nothing will be done about it, some of them because they're afraid of further retribution from the other students. And how would that affect these statistics? Because, we could say, oh yeah, we're down 64.7, but those are of the reported incidences, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And do you want to answer that?
Yeah, the realm of non-reporting ranges somewhere around 5 to 7%.
Okay.
And that's in most school districts, out of fear of whatever, of retaliation, of not knowing who to approach, of not knowing how to report, quite honestly. And that's why it is one of the assembly bills that we have something online on the front and on the face of every school website about reporting bullying. So that percentage, it ranges between 5 to 7%.
Right, and I think that's a statistic that should be included in the report eventually. I think that would be a good thing. All polls will always do a plus or minus differential. So I just wanted to bring that up. And I think that we also have to ask ourselves, sometimes find out why students are not, if we can get into it at all, because, I think administrators are pretty savvy about what's going on in their campuses, and they maybe know where something is going on and the student hasn't come forward. But why? Because if they feel like that the school is not going to do anything about it, that's something we need to do something about. If they have a fear of the bully, there's less we can do about that. But if the other thing I said, then we have to take that seriously and make sure that we adjust and pivot to help.
And I agree with you, Mr. Marlowe. Additionally, just in our day-to-day work and being on the campuses and talking with site administrators and parents and students, me in particular, I get those calls from the parents who are saying, this is happening, no one's helping my child, we don't know who to talk to, and I can tell you that there's a reduction in the number of those calls as well. So it is a result of the change in the culture on the sites as well. I'm not saying it's solely that, but I firmly believe it is now. The culture is changing, the expectations are changing, and so the behavior is changing.
And I absolutely, the data that's presented verifies everything you're saying, and gives me hope that the program will work out.
Yes. But I understand what you're saying, and yes, there is a window of error or whatnot. But additionally, I can tell you just from personal experience, and the person who receives these calls and gets those emails, this year versus last year, there is a marked difference.
Great. Thank you so much.
Well, I want to thank you for the presentation.
Welcome. This service is provided by freeconferencecall.com. Please enter your
Sorry. Just trying to get Michelle back on the line.
Yeah, and I thank you for the presentation. I think that this is a very, very important part of our district and what we're trying to accomplish. And I have no specific questions, but I look forward to periodic updates and reports on how it's working.
Thank you.
So this is a personal call. No, I'm sorry. Just trying to get Michelle back on the line. No, it's all right.
I told her
here.
that
I'm waiting for her to join, so I'll just listen with this here. This looks amazing, and I love PBIS. I love all of the information, because a lot of times as board members, we're kind of separate from all the detail, of what it is that the program entails. I'm very proud to be a Husky hero. My name is on the wall in Ms. Bresnick's kindergarten classroom because I went and I saw this in action, and it's phenomenal to see. The teachers are really talking to the kids on a daily basis as they're going through their lessons, and that's what I think is so outstanding about this program, is that it really becomes part of the fabric of every single day. And I think that's the piece that actually makes it successful. I would really be interested to know, and this is just purely out of curiosity, at the end of the year, is it possible to capture from the students in the form of a survey, whether it's in person in the school or by email with the parents, do they feel safer? Do they feel more comfortable? Do they feel, that's really what all of this is about, is making sure that students, when they come on our campuses and in their classrooms, they feel safe and they're able to learn and not be distracted by, other things that are going on. So I'd really love to know at the end, we've talked about exit surveys every year, even for returning students. I think there's a lot of really valuable information to capture there. But I'd really be interested to know, what the feedback is on that, and how many of the students really do feel safer and really do feel like the environment is changing and the culture is changing. So,
to respond to that, there are formalized walkthroughs that are scheduled for the spring that I will conduct with LACO, and there's also a closing assessment that students and staff participate in, so you will get that data.
Awesome. Thank you. No, I'm still listening to music.
Okay. So if Ms. Marcus is listening, she can call in, and if when I'm done speaking, we can go to her. If not, we're going to move on. So I have a few questions. First of all, thanks for the update. I want some clarification. When did when did the program actually begin the rollout? Because I know that last year we had a discussion. I don't think it was yet implemented. So would you say that the rollout actually began just last semester?
The formalized rollout or training began January of 2019. So there was a full semester of studying district data and trends.
Okay. So when did the children actually have the contact with the curriculum where they actually understood what was the expectation of the program and the program was laid out? Like, when did that initially happen to the 4 sites?
That happened for all sites except the high school fall of this year.
That may be why we increase it.
Well, the fall of this year would have been, it could be, do you have a month?
Every school did it at a different time, and so I do have those
because I know
dates,
that my son just came home like this year and said to me that he just had it. It might have been just right before the break, but it was literally at the very, very latter in the last few weeks.
Which school?
Hawthorne. That they had an assembly, and it was the first time that he understood the acronym. So I asked him, was that the first time that you had an introduction? And he says, yeah, they just brought it to our assembly, and so for me that's very late for Hawthorne. And so when I look, and the reason I asked that question is because when I look at the data on page 19, I think it's page 19. I think Mr. Margot, page 19. So walk me through this data, please. I'm trying to understand it. So year 1920, which is the current year right now, we have reports of discipline issues going on at Beverly Hills High School, Hawthorne, Beverly Vista, Horseman, ER. So ER, obviously, I don't understand. If ER was offline, what does that mean?
Can I borrow your handle?
Sure. It's closed.
No reports.
Right, no, but there's reports of 70 students.
That was from last year. That was 1819 first semester.
1920 says here.
Shifted to the right. You have to move all 3.
So you shifted all the right. Okay, I understood. So I was reading it this way, 1920. So you're saying it's shifted?
I believe it's.
This isn't here. I'm looking at this right here. There's nothing under 1819.
Yeah, there's 3 headings and 3 columns, but they're not in line.
Okay, I understand. So let me ask you, so how could the change be? So I understand ER. So when there's when the change, the percentage and change, was that just for one semester since the program just rolled out? How can we really capture those changes? Do you see what I'm saying?
I do, and the true answer to that is PBIS is really about a shift in adult behavior. and the adults had been effectively and officially trained and experienced multiple sessions of training. And so that allowed them to implement and utilize other means of correction in engaging the students. So the rollout to the students is subsequent and secondary, but the shift has happened with adult behavior, which needs to happen first. And so there was less of an implementation of punitive discipline with the students.
Okay. So one of the questions that I was recently asked, and I had no way of really answering this by a few students, was, there's expected behavior that we require our students just based on the basis of our, what we expect. Our student, what is it called? When we start the school year, there's a student code of conduct, and we agree as parents. We get a portal and we agree to certain, behavior, and that's an expectation, but that's not positive behavior, right? There is a difference. So someone asked me, are we rewarding our students for behavior that is expected? Because if we are, then where is the positive behavior? And so I said I will ask that question when this comes. So I'm really happy you're here, because that is a question. I think we can't, are we calling PBIS expected behavior? Or is it beyond expected behavior?
I'm glad you asked that question. We had our site team meeting today at Horace Mann and addressed that specifically, and how we're rolling that facet out with the staff, so that staff understands that normative behavior, which aligns with all of our adult expectations, does not warrant a reward, but it's the above and beyond that the incentives apply to.
So it's not expected behavior?
They're called expected behaviors, but the expected behaviors are the behaviors that students are to be informed of, but our normative behavior, we're not rewarding.
Okay. Yeah, because I think there is a distinction there.
And that part,
Yes.
Mrs. Hacker, that's part of the training for, as Angela said, for the staff and the site administrators to understand the difference, and which is why there are monthly site staff meetings to address that and to give them a chance to discuss and understand.
So I noticed that one of the ways you're going to go back, and it was somewhere in here, there was a self-evaluation process. Who's the self-evaluator? The adults? Or is it the children, or how are we evaluating? Is it the coordinators that are on site, or what do you mean by?
So the self-evaluation process started with myself, with site coaches, and with the team site administrators. But the true evaluation process, which I mentioned that will happen in the spring, that results or engages the walkthroughs where we talk to kids, we talk to staff about feeling safer, their awareness, that sort of thing. That's going to be engaged by both students and staff.
Okay.
And in conjunction with LACO, our support trainers.
Great. Well, I look forward to continuing this discussion and finding out, what results we have with this program, because I think that one of the biggest complaints that we get is that parents don't believe that we are doing enough when it comes to discipline or issues of behavior, and it's difficult to gauge that because some of the times the board isn't aware of we're really not aware of the discipline issues, nor should we. But it's something that we can say, look, here we're doing this, we're doing PBIS, and we have results that are proving to be positive. And if there's not, I think there's nothing in correcting what we're doing. Like, this is an opportunity for us to grow and to correct, whatever the program as the elements of the program, so that we have more of an impact in the results that we're looking to achieve. So thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Can I add one more thing,
Yes,
Mrs. Hacker?
please. So I'll have Mrs. Chisholm has something to say, Mrs. Marcus. I'm glad you're back, and then we'll go right back to you.
Don't leave yet, Angela. We have one more. I just want to add, it was kind of gleaned over, but it wasn't specifically addressed. We are beginning the implementation at the high school. It's a different implementation at secondary versus middle school and elementary. And very few schools nationwide implement at the high school, but we are going to implement at the high school. And I think our data shows why we need to. And so I think it shows real clearly there's an increase. It affects our dashboard. It affects many things. And it affects the culture of the school. So the staff rollout was just this past week, and the student rollout is next week.
There's an event this week.
Excuse me. And so it will look different than the middle school and the elementary school, but it is happening. So I just want the board to be aware of that, and so that to address any questions that may be present about the data that shows the increase at the high school.
Thank you for clarifying that. Mrs. Marcus.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'm sorry, I lost the connection. I enjoyed the presentation. I've been able to witness some of the PBIS programs at the lower grades. I have a feeling, and it's just a feeling that I think might be very important, that as the students progress through the grade levels with the PBIS program, that as it starts to get near the high school, that we will see a better use of the program at the high school, and I think it will be more effective once the kids have gone through the program at the elementary school and the middle school. That's not to say that we shouldn't be working on the high school at this time, as Ms. Chisholm said, but I think that as the kids progress through the grade levels, I think we're going to see that that's going to work in the high school even better, and along with the program they're going to institute.
Thank you, Mrs. Marcus.
Mrs. Marcus, you're absolutely correct, and I'm sure you understand that as a former educator. That is part of the main reason why we started with the elementary grades and then rolling to the middle school and last at the high school, because we want to have that effect of students having the most time with the implementation of the framework and the expected behaviors and the things that are being taught.
Thank you. Mr. Seaman, I wasn't clear. Are you also going to be adding to this piece, or because I heard we don't want to steal your thunder, so I thought you were probably going to speak. No?
Nope. Later.
Okay, great.
To be continued.
Okay,
so
well,
the last thing I have is that after the walkthroughs, we'll come back with another update for the board, probably in this summer, to give you feedback from that information.
I would ask that when. I guess this is a question for Mr. Seaman. The LCAP, the new LCAP, when do you anticipate the adoption of that? Doesn't that happen right around the summer?
We have to submit by June 30th of 2020. So we hope to bring all that information to you right after the strategic plan is discussed around fourth quarter. We hope to then bring the adopted LCAP to you probably by the end of May. So that way it gives us time to submit to the state to be able to receive any feedback if there's any changes that need to be made.
So I think it makes sense from a chronological point of view that the information that Mrs. Chisholm just spoke about that will be coming to the board, that come first, so that we're sure to look out for that in the LCAP, because we're required to do that as a board. Yep. That's one of the biggest things that we'll do next year, or any board will do. So I would really recommend that happen first, and then that the LCAP happen later.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mrs.
Yeah, we'll just
Hacker,
need to coordinate it and bring it.
I just wanted to add one more thing from what Mrs. Marcus said. In looking into PBIS, when we first brought that in front of the board, I noticed that it didn't have as high of an involvement rate. I don't want to say success rate, but involvement rate with high schools. I think it's geared toward a younger mindset in its general programming. But as we move it or attempt to move it through the high school, are we at some point going to be smart enough to say, hey, you know what, we need something else here, as opposed to going in full tilt and then wasting a lot of time and resources?
Great question, and that's why the rollout has been slow at the high school, because we've spent time looking at what is actually relevant at the high school, what the culture is, what's needed. We have a great site coach who's very engaged and organized and can lead this at the high school. We have the site administration's buy-in. We have a couple of model PBIS high schools in our immediate areas, and we've had a couple of visits to them, and we are learning from the people who are doing it successfully at the high school level. So that's why we're taking our time with it, and we're not just one size fits all and doing what we're doing at each, even it's different from site to site, but especially the high school, because it's not as widely implemented at the high school level.
No, thank you very much. I wanted to hear that reality in the program.
Okay, any further questions? No. Okay, moving on then. We're going to go to our student services. Student report. Student board member report, sorry.
Right. So last week, the Beverly Vista ASB organized and put on an anti-vaping awareness week. This is very fitting, considering that we just approved the vaping resolution. And although this is a great step moving forward, There's only so much that this board and staff can do to prevent students from vaping, so it's great to see that the student body took action on this issue at the middle school. I wanted to congratulate all the dancers from the dance company for their 3 nights of performances last week. It was remarkable seeing so many students that actually choreographed their own dances, which is pretty awesome. And lastly, the high school is having their annual Wish Week this week. Wish Week, in partnership with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, entails spirit days and multiple fundraising events to raise money for a child with a critical illness so they can enjoy a life-changing event. The child will be presented at the Beverly vs. Samo game next Tuesday, February 4th. And there will be a pep rally as well for the winter sports in the swim gym on Tuesday, February 4th. And that culminates the Wish Week event. And yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Burrow. We're moving on to Human Resources.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2019-2020-010, authorizing assignment in accordance with Ed Code 44258.7B.
A second.
Okay, discussion. I have a question. So for Mrs. Chisholm, is that who I'm presenting the question to? For the approval of the resolution
Really HR.
authorizing assignment. Oh, no, that's different. No, that's not.
This is the Ed Code resolution for one of our coaches.
Yes.
Yep.
So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstentions or objections? Okay, it passes 5-0. And I believe we have one more. Board policies.
Move approval of first reading BP 6170.1, transitional kindergarten.
I'll second. Okay, discussion. Mr. Rupert?
Mr. Spitz, would you be amenable to waiving the first reading and go to a second reading
Sure.
on this one?
Well, I just want to have a question, if that's okay, before we go in there. I just wanted to clarify. Ms. Chisholm, can you tell me, please, what has been your view, and your just by keeping record of this program, what has been the enrollment per class? Can you tell me the average in the last 2 years, maybe last year, and then break it up if there was a difference this year?
So during my time here, we've had 2 TK classes, one at Hawthorne and initially at Beverly Vista, now this year at Hawthorne and Horace Mann. Those classes have been capped at 20, not capped, but we've enrolled up to 21 students. They generally tend to stay full the whole year. Currently, our class at Horace Mann has 19 students. We had a couple of students move. But overall, we've had approximately 21 students in both classes.
And so I know there's language for kindergarten, first, second, and third to have 23-1. Correct?
Board policy 6151.
And I asked for it to be put on. So, but for TK, that it doesn't encompass TK. Is that correct, or does it?
Currently, as it's written, I have a copy of it here. I'm looking at it, and it says 4 grades K through 3. The district shall limit class size to no more than 23 students in a class.
23.
So it doesn't specifically say TK. The only TK that's addressed in this policy has to do with the special education TK classroom, which is the class that we have at one of the sites, and it talks about student to staff ratios, but it's not specific to the other TK classes. That's the only class that's mentioned here.
So for the board, I just wanted to notify you that I had asked for that language to be included in part of your board package, because I remember 23 being somewhere, reading it somewhere, so thanks for clarifying that. So just to reiterate, class size that we are married to right now in this district, and has been the case, and unless there's any objection from my colleagues, is 23-1 for grades kindergarten, first, second, and third.
Correct.
And will you be recommending language or for TK, or is that going to, or Or you're not recommending it?
I'm not recommending language specifically to class size. It's been more of a practice, and we haven't had any issues of it.
For TK.
For TK. It's just, that's been the practice. That was the practice when I arrived. I've continued it, and we've had more than enough enrollment in both sections. So unless that's a wish of the board, I don't know that it's absolutely necessary to put a number in there, because we don't have any issues with it going over, and we don't have any issues with enrollment.
Okay.
In the section.
And so the reason for the change in, or the resolution tonight, the board policy.
Yes.
Is because, you want to explain that?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. So I have to go backwards to go forward, so bear with me.
Please.
Go back to 2010, 2011. The practice has always been that there's a cutoff date for TK enrollment. Traditionally, it's around December 2nd. I remember that very well because I have a daughter who's born December 5th, and I kept saying, but she can go, she can go. However, fast forward to 2015, 2016, Ed Code 4800, letter C, changed the rules. It said if the district and the Board of Education would like to, they can enroll students in transitional kindergarten TK who will have his or her 5th birthday after December 1st, but during that school year. So prior to this school year, the 1920 school year, it's been BHUSD's practice to cut it off at December 2nd. There's always, or around there's a calendar that comes out with the guidance. Based on when the students are born, and it varies between September, October, ending in December or late November, based on the number of days that are calculated. However, because we were not implementing this and not aware of this until this year, we had not accepted the younger students. We accepted them this year, and we had great response from parents in the community. However, instructionally, Dr. Brady and I met with both of the TK teachers in the district and had a great conversation about how that impacted the program. Mm-hmm. And so we came up with some guidelines with their input and the conversation that we had, and that's what you have here. So based on our discussion, we felt that instructionally, to have the best program, we needed to limit the window so that we didn't have really young kids with older kids. And we're recommending now that the window be from August 1st through December 31st, and that's a hard window. So that way, we are able to level the classes, and the teachers know who they're receiving instructionally and developmentally. So that's the change.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any questions? Once more, Mr.
We're changing. We're waiving the first reading and
voting on a second reading.
A second reading.
Yes.
Is that legal?
Yes, of course.
That's legal.
But
That's
who
my
made
motion.
the second?
I'll second.
Wait,
Mrs. Hacker did.
So do you have to
Yes,
accept it?
I will accept that.
I think that
Mrs. Marcus, you had a question?
Yeah, that is a question. You're talking about a 2-year program of TK. So if a student is, let's say, born August 2nd, they will be in the TK program all the way through the following June. They will then start kindergarten the following. That's the second year. Why is this a 2-year?
Right.
You're talking 2-year program.
No.
They would go into.
They would go to K.
They would go to kindergarten.
No, it's unless I misunderstood misunderstanding Ms. Marcus, it's 1 year because they would have their 5th birthday during the TK school year, and then they would be eligible for K enrollment the following school year.
Following year.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted. I somehow I saw the word 2 years, and I.
It is, and it's slightly misleading actually. So for clarification, it's the second paragraph in the policy. The district's
We will take
transition.
that out.
Clean that up.
We will delete that, and I'll send a revised copy to the board.
Accepting the student. Hello. And accepting the students. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Let's say you have an influx of students, and there's a lot of them, and you have the time window of August 1st through December 31st. Would you, if let's say, you say it's on a first-come, first-served basis regardless of the day of their birthday?
Absolutely, Mrs.
So in other words,
Marcus.
let's say a child that was born December 2nd comes with the classes full, but it's got kids in it there August 1st. it's strictly on a first come, first served basis. Is that correct? Then?
That's correct, Mrs. Marcus. That's why we use the online registration process, because it gives us a time and date stamp of when the parents register their student, and we're able to go through it and offer enrollment based on the time and date stamp, which is why we've communicated the open enrollment dates and information that's gone out to families so that they know.
Okay, I just so that the clarification, so we don't run into situations like we may have in the past.
Understood. Yes.
That's right. Okay.
Thank you.
I have no further questions.
Okay, all those in favor of...
Aye.
Aye.
No objections? No.
This is right. Can I ask one more question before we go? I do see where it says the 2-year kindergarten program. That's a error. So if we can just agree to that, it will just say 1-year TK, and I will send that as a revised, and then that will be what is approved. It's on the first.
We have to remake the motion. That should be cleaned up. We captured that, I think, before we voted.
I think so.
Oh, excuse me. Mr. Seaman is helping me. We're fine. It's a 2-year program. It's transitional kindergarten and kindergarten.
Right.
My apologies to the board.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify that so everyone knows what we're talking about. So it is correct as written. That's the clarification. My apologies.
Thank you so much. We're moving on to communication from the board members. Mr. Rupero.
Yeah, just quickly before I get into the district business, I just wanted to commemorate the lives of Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and the 7 others involved in the tragic helicopter crash this weekend. And then moving on to district business, I recommend everyone check out the district calendar, which is so beautifully organized on the BHUSD website. And 2 events this week. Tomorrow, the high school winter band concert at Horace Mann, 7 p.m. And then on Thursday, the 30th, is the a cappella showcase at Beverly Vista Middle School. This is always a fun event. There's modern pop songs to classics and all different times and artists. So those are the upcoming events, and have a great week.
Thank you, Thomas. Unfortunately, tomorrow night I will be at the LACSTA Trustee Association monthly meeting, where they will be doing a presentation on ethnic studies and implicit bias. So I will bring something back to the board after I go to my first, after 8 years on the board, my first LACSTA meeting. So it's about time.
In a study session last week, the board received an update on funding for the construction projects underway at Beverly High Buildings B3 and B4. The construction costs are now reliably projected at triple the original budget that was developed by our construction manager in 2016. The good news is that with a rearrangement of reserves, Measure BH bond proceeds will be adequate to fully fund the work. After the study session, Mrs. Hacker reminded me that Bond Measure Y in November 2016 was based on that original budget developed by our construction manager, even though all the board members knew that construction manager was third-rate and unreliable. Now that we know the true construction costs, I believe this brief commentary about Measure Y is timely. First, in 2016, this board was debating reconfiguration to one middle school. The majority of the board members were adamantly opposed to reconfiguration, and they embedded their opposition in the resolution. This resolution authorizing Measure Y, which reads in part, whereas it has been determined it is in the best interest of the district to maintain the K-8 model in schools throughout the district. And unquote, and quote, the district will use the proceeds from Measure Y to renovate and make necessary repairs and upgrades to Hawthorne School to operate exclusively as a K-8 site. Eventually, unfortunately, Mr. Margot voted with Mrs. Hacker and me in favor of reconfiguration. Mrs. Hacker and I voted no on the resolution for Measure Y because the plan was hastily and impulsively developed, and our construction manager and facilities director were not reliable. Also, it resolved to maintain the K-8 model. Because the board vote was 3-2, Measure Y required approval by 67% rather than 55%, and it failed by a very narrow margin. Subsequently, board members Lisa Korbutov and Howard Goldstein vilified Mrs. Hacker and me because we caused the failure of Measure Y. Now, in retrospect, we can all thank our lucky stars that Measure Y failed. Had it passed, we would have initiated construction with an incompetent or hastily replaced construction manager and an unreliable facilities director, and the designated Measure Y bond proceeds would have been insufficient to fund more than 1/3 of the work at buildings B3 and B4. In other words, it would have been a disaster of unimaginable consequence. So, Mrs. Hacker, hooray for you and me.
2 years later, but yes, yes. Thank you.
All right. I try to live my life with the assumption that the universe delivers and that right action takes place. So I will give you your due rewards on having the vision that Measure Y at the time was a mistake. I want to congratulate again our PSAT and MSQT recognition recipients tonight. I think that's tremendous achievement, and I'm really happy to see this kind of success. I have to thank Mrs. Hacker for the initiative to increase recognition that she mentioned at her installation. I think it's always wonderful to celebrate the good things that we do, because there are many of them. I want to celebrate our academic decathlon team for completing their first day of competition in Pico Rivera over this past weekend. I got to go and be a judge in the interviews. This coming weekend, we have the second phase of that competition, and then based on their performance of those 2 weekends combined, we'll find out if they made state championships. So that's very exciting, and congratulations to our academic decathlon team on their performance so far. And for the sake of brevity, I will say that's it. Thank you.
Mrs. Marcus.
Just a brief comment. I hope to be back in my chair at the next meeting.
Great.
Thank you, Ms. Marcus. So I just want to say that I think Mrs. Walker-Schuman stole my thunder a little bit, and I just want to say to the board that I was very pleased with everyone's participation at the last study session. We had 2 study sessions back to back, and I know that it was a lot, it was considerable, but I think that what everyone had to say was very important. And I also want to say that going forward, I hope that we will model behavior in this on this board, that when students are recognized, that the entire board is part of that acknowledgement and participates in taking the picture, because I think it is important. It is the entire board that is behind this district, and I often feel that we don't get, I don't think anybody here has ego issues, but I think that it's important to, kind of like City Council, model that behavior with our students and be in that moment of recognition. And so thank you for participating, and I look forward to a year where we will continue to do that. I think it's important that all of you play a role in that, and I think it was really positive for this district as a whole. To the staff, thank you for all the work that you've done to date in preparing your very comprehensive items for the board. I know that it takes a lot of time in preparing, and especially when we have questions. I really enjoyed the way we did business today. I think it was very transparent, and I think we're better for it. So thank you to all. And that's it. And Mr. Blake for staying so long. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Good night. Thank you. Congratulations again.
Yes, it's very exciting.
Yeah, let me just check.
We need to meet.
I'm sending you that. This.
What's that?
I'm just sending you this quick email.
Oh, is that the one he was talking about?
Yeah. Just so you have it.
Thank you so much.
Good night, guys.
I thought it was good today. What do you think?
A member. Thank you. An important member, but a member.